Attention fish-loving treasure hunters, this is a very appetizing story. If you have a friend who loves eating fish, I suggest you invite them to watch together. The story takes place in an old community in Shandong. Li Zongping and Song Ritu had dinner and agreed to meet at the square by the river to watch the old lady dance square dance. Li Zongping suddenly stopped and pointed at the river, calling out to Song Ritu to look. In the grass nest, it seemed like there was a big fish. Following Li Zongping's direction, Song Ritu also looked into the river and was quite surprised. There is a strangely large black fish in the grassy meadow. They estimated that it was at least 1 meter long. This matter soon spread out, and more people saw the big fish. What's strange is that the fish seems to be hanging around nearby every day. This really makes fishing enthusiasts eager to try their luck. They are all planning to catch that big fish. On that day, Song Ritu also took a fishing rod to the water area to give it a try, thinking he had arrived relatively early. Unexpectedly, a young man arrived even earlier than him. And that young man had already caught quite a few small fish. The two of them were chatting aimlessly, and suddenly Song Ritu noticed that his float was moving. The float shook a few times, and with a swoosh, it was completely dragged into the water. With that momentum, this fish is definitely not small. Song Ritu is extremely excited and hurriedly pulled up the fishing rod. Played a few rounds. He managed to reel in a pitch-black big fish. After a showy display, he happily took the big black fish home. Look at the size of that fish. It really looks like the big fish they saw before. He arrogantly instructed his old partner to tidy up and stew it for lunch. The old partner said that this fish rarely grows so big, so why don't we release it instead? But Song Ritu insisted on eating it. Unable to resist Song Ritu, the old partner had no choice but to stew the fish. Song Ritu, who has been alive for decades, is eating such a big black fish for the first time. He picked up a piece and put it straight into his mouth. But after chewing a few bites, a strong fishy smell spread in his mouth. Song Ritu suddenly felt a strong wave of nausea. He quickly spat out the fish meat. His spouse felt very strange. She said the fish smelled good when stewing in the pot. Why does Song Ritu look like that after eating it? Song Ritu said that the fish tasted extremely bad and was impossible to swallow. He made his wife pour it all into the trash can. His wife tasted it, and indeed, it was surprisingly fishy and smelly. So she had no choice but to pour it all away. That night, something strange happened. The couple went to bed, as usual after watching a TV drama, but Song Ritu heard crying from outside in his sleep. The sound was faint and ethereal, coming and going, but it kept echoing in his mind. Song Ritu sat up in bed all of a sudden, thinking it was a neighbor couple having a quarrel, and the woman was crying. But as he listened carefully, the sound seemed to be coming from their own living room. He hesitated for a moment, but decided to get up and take a look. Maybe his wife had forgotten to turn off the TV again. However, when he reached the living room, he found the TV was off. At that moment, the crying also stopped. Just as he thought he was imagining things and was about to go back to bed, the crying started again. This time, he listened carefully and realized that the sound was coming from the kitchen. Summoning up his courage, he pushed open the door to the kitchen. He was shocked by the scene before him as soon as he walked in. On the corner of the kitchen cabinet, there was a vaguely floating woman with disheveled hair. Her skin was festering and swollen, with 2 lines of bloody tears running down her cheeks. Before Song Ritu could react, the woman roared and pounced towards him. He had lived for decades and had never seen such a chilling scene. Song Ritu's legs went weak, stumbling to the ground. He threw his arms in front of him, shouting not to come closer. He tightly closed his eyes, feeling his arms firmly grasped and shaken incessantly. When he regained his composure, he realized it was the voice of his old partner. Only then did he release his arms. His old partner asked him what was wrong, but he remained silent. He stretched his neck to look at the trash can, but there was nothing there. His partner helped the paralyzed Song Ritu up and walked towards the bedroom. Then he told his partner about the experience he had just had. His partner didn't believe it at all. She said he was just half asleep. But Song Ritu started running a high fever that night. He couldn't get out of bed the next morning. Lee Zongping came over to check on him after hearing about it. Song Ritu just ate some fish. He repeated the story about seeing a ghost with him. When Lee Zongping heard him say that the fish smelled fragrant but tasted fishy and smelly, he suddenly remembered a folk saying. He said that it is said that fish would eat the dead corpses sunk in the river, and the fish that ate the corpses would grow big and fat. If this person died unjustly, the fish that ate his flesh would be smelly and stinky. The vengeful spirit will attach itself to a large fish and refuse to leave, circling the area where the corpse sank all day long. Song Ritu feels like the perfect match as soon as you hear it. Lee Zongping was afraid of scaring him, so he quickly said it was just a myth. Song Ritu took more than a week to recover after staying at home. By the time a month had passed since the incident, an old man surnamed Wu was casting his fishing net in the river. He was at the spot where Song Ritu had caught the big fish. He caught a skeleton. The skeleton had been in the river for who knows how long. It had been consumed by fish and shrimp, leaving only a skeleton. So old Wu reported to the police. It is said that the victim was a murder victim. Old Wu received a generous reward for solving the case. Is there a river in your hometown where people often drown? In our village, there is a river called the Chiao River, and many people drown there every year. The story begins at the Chiao River. On that day, there were two elderly people and a child standing by the river. The in-laws and daughter-in-law looked sorrowfully at the river. It turns out that their son from the family drowned, and his body did not resurface. So they asked Lee Zongping to help with the salvage. Lee Zongping is the corpse salvager in the village. It is said that there is no body he cannot salvage. The daughter-in-law is persuading the mother-in-law. Old Wu behind pointed towards the river and shouted, "It's back!" A family of 3 looked towards the river with hopeful eyes. This person is Lee Zongping. As the wooden boat approached, people from the Wu family are all on edge. I don't know if Zongping has managed to rescue the person. When the boat reaches the shore, Wu family took a look inside the wooden boat. Their hearts sank. There was nothing inside the wooden boat except for a pile of fishing nets. The elderly mother cried with tears in her eyes and choked up as she asked Lee Zongping, "Did you not catch anything?" Lee Zongping did not answer and silently raised his right hand. I saw that a rope was tied around his wrist. The other end of the rope extended into the water, and Lee Zongping started to pull the rope up vigorously. I can tell. The other end of the rope should be tied to something very heavy. The rope is being slowly pulled up onto the boat. On the other end is a pale, swollen arm. It turns out that Lee Zongping tied the body to the rope and dragged it back in the water. Knowledgeable people know that drowning victims shouldn't be brought onto a boat, as it is considered unlucky. Lee Zongping slowly placed the body on the shore, then turned around and returned to the boat. Although the body had turned pale and bloated from being soaked, but the elderly couple could clearly recognize that this was their son, and they threw themselves onto him. They held onto the cold corpse and cried desperately. Lee Zongping, who had been retrieving corpses for many years, was already accustomed to such scenes. He still had the same indifferent expression and was about to leave in his boat. But he was suddenly stopped by people from the Wu family, who wanted to pay him for retrieving the body. Lee Zongping did not accept the fee offered by people from the Wu family because he knew that the person who drowned was the only laborer in their family. He pushed the boat away with an oar and left. Lee Zongping was originally a money-driven guy, but he changed because of one incident. He used to make a living by fishing, and he can stay underwater for half an hour without taking a breath. Later, he started taking on jobs to salvage corpses, and he made a good profit every time. And each time, he became more and more unscrupulous. One time he helped the elderly couple of the Yu family salvage their daughter's body. He ignored the elderly couples begging on their knees. He insisted on receiving 30,000 yuan before returning the body. No matter how the two elderly people begged, it was of no use. The Yu family, who were already not well off, couldn't bear to have their daughter's body kept immersed in water. In the end, they scraped together 23,000 yuan to exchange for their daughter, resorting to selling all they had. Li Zongping has really been involved in incidents like this a lot. His wife passed away early, so his only daughter got married to a neighboring village. She comes back every few days to help her dad with household chores, like laundry and cooking. On this day, Li Zongping came back carrying over 20,000 renminbi and some liquor and meat. His daughter Dongmei was at his house cooking for him. Dongmei, who usually does not approve of her father drinking, not only cooked a lot of dishes to accompany alcohol today. She also took the initiative to pour alcohol for Li Zongping. Li Zongping naturally knew that his daughter had something to say, so he told her not to hide it. Dongmei smiled and praised her father as clever. Then she looked serious and said his behavior of extortion was wrong. People nearby were whispering about his unethical behavior, hoping he would correct it. The daughter was interrupted before she could finish speaking. He frowned and said, "What's wrong with making money by my own ability?" Dongmei was a little angry and asked why he couldn't be less harsh on situations like the Yu family couple today. Li Zongping can tolerate others talking about himself, but he doesn't want his daughter to do the same. He stood up suddenly and started yelling at his daughter. Then he stood up and walked out of the door. Li Zongping felt that even his own daughter looked down on him, which made him very upset. He hadn't walked a few steps when it started pouring rain from the sky, as if even the heavens were against him. He walked to a grass shed by the river, wearing wet clothes, and lay down. He thought about the years of playing the roles of both a father and a mother. The hardship of raising his daughter made tears flow uncontrollably. Unknowingly, he fell asleep in the shed. It's unclear how long passed before he was awakened by a woman's voice outside. Looking outside through the curtain, he saw his own daughter standing there in the rain. He quickly rushed out. After the alcohol wore off, he also felt that he had spoken too harshly to his daughter. But the daughter's behavior was very strange. Her voice sounded ethereal and unreal. She begged Li Zongping to forgive her for being naive, and said she was just passing by to take a look and then leave, asking him to take care in the future. After saying this, she turned and walked towards the river. Li Zongping was very puzzled, thinking his daughter wanted to take drastic action, so he hurriedly went to stop her. However, when he reached out, he unexpectedly passed through Dongmei's body. He stood foolishly in place, his hands uncontrollably trembling. He knew his daughter was no longer there, just that he couldn't rest assured without coming back to see for himself. He couldn't help but burst into loud crying. It turned out that the daughter went out to find old Duo with a raincoat on, but she accidentally slipped into the river and lost her life. Li Zongping searched for his daughter for several days, but couldn't find her. Since then, he seemed to have changed. Every time he helped retrieve bodies, he didn't accept any money. People said he was seeking redemption. If a child says they saw something strange, even if adults cannot see it, do not think that the child is talking nonsense. After reading this story, you will understand why. This is a true story that happened in Lugang Village, located in Xiangyang City, Hubei Province, China in 2009. When Li Zongping was 5 years old, he lived with his parents and grandmother. That morning, Li Zongping's father and grandmother were going to work in the fields. Mom stayed at home to take care of the children and cook. The Li family did not work outside, but grew medicinal herbs at home, living a comfortable life. In the late morning, Mom is getting ready to cook. Li Zongping said he wants to go to the West Court to play soccer. The West Court is more spacious and free of clutter. He is very happy playing here. The soccer ball was kicked by him and went under the wall of the old house. He ran over to pick up the ball and casually glanced into the window. This glance scared Li Zongping so much that his face turned pale. He ran into the house crying. He ran towards his mother who was cooking. He trembled and said he was very scared. Mom thought he had fallen. She checked her son while asking him what had happened. Li Zongping stammered and said he saw 4 human heads. Mom was somewhat displeased, thinking that her son was talking nonsense. But she still took him to the West Court. Li Zongping hid behind his mother, tightly grasping her arm. When they arrived at the West Courtyard, he pointed to the old house and said, "Mom, look, it's hanging right by that window." But his mother didn't see anything. However, Li Zongping insisted that there were 4 human heads dripping with blood there. He kept trembling. Said that 2 of them were his father and grandmother. Mother started feeling chills down her back when she heard her son speak so vividly. The mother, who saw nothing, could only continue to comfort Li Zongping. She carried him out of the western courtyard. They arrived at the neighboring Shen Sampo's house. Sampo saw Li Zongping cry like this and asked what happened. Li Zongping's mother then told Sampo what had just happened again. Sampo also didn't understand. She called them into the house to give Li Zongping a big apple while he no longer cried, asking him to tell them what he saw again. Li Zongping still insists on saying he saw 4 bleeding heads by himself. Sampo felt something was off. He turned on the TV to let Li Zongping watch cartoons. Then she pulled Li Zongping's mother aside and said that the child's eyes were clean. Will his father and grandmother have any trouble? When Li Zongping's mother heard it, she panicked. She asked Sampo to help look after the child. She hurriedly ran towards the field. The more she thought about it, the more scared she became. She ran while praying. But when she ran to the field, the scene in front of her still scared her silly. The scene of her husband and mother-in-law lying in a pool of blood, even more terrifying, their heads were nowhere to be found. This incident caused a great sensation locally, and eventually the police caught the murderer. The murderer is a violent, mentally ill person. That day, he attacked more than 10 people, 4 of whom died on the spot. The victims also had their heads chopped off and strung together with a rope, just like what Li Zongping saw. Never act recklessly when you do something wrong, because you may not know. Who have you offended yourself? The story takes place in the Mudanjiang area in northeast China. That winter was especially cold, with ice and snow everywhere. Early in the morning, hunter Li Zongping went into the mountains to hunt with his equipment. At that time, there were no gun hunting bans. Many people relied on hunting to feed themselves. Li Zongping is also an experienced hunter. He can bring back several game animals every time he goes into the mountains. But that day, he wandered for several hours and didn't spot a single living creature. Until evening. Li Zongping still didn't catch anything. He grumbled about getting old on one hand and looked for a place to rest on the other. He saw a big withered tree ahead, which is a sheltered spot from the wind. He walked over and leaned against the withered tree to take a rest. But on this cold and frozen day, Li Zongping was both cold and hungry. He glanced at the big tree behind him, where there was a dark tree hole. He thought it might be a good idea to pick up some firewood, roast the dry rations he had on him, fill his stomach, and then continue downhill. In no time, he set up a fire pit inside the tree hollow. The fire pit was lit, and he squatted in front of the tree hollow, warming himself by the fire while heating up his dried rations. Soon, he felt warm and comfortable. Eating the warm dried rations, Li Zongping immediately regained his energy. But he faintly smelled a barbecue aroma. These desolate mountains and wild ridges made him somewhat puzzled. But the barbecue aroma became stronger and stronger, as if drifting out of a tree hollow. Li Zongping couldn't help but be surprised and thought, could it be that they roasted the hibernating animals in the tree hollow? He quickly pushed aside the firewood in the tree hollow. He leaned in and peeked inside, wanting to see what was being roasted. It turned out to be some kind of animal. After he pulled out those overcooked animals, he finally saw that they were a few medium-sized yellow weasels. Li Zongping's heart started to feel uneasy. Everyone knows that yellow weasels hold grudges. Let's hope he doesn't make enemies with them. But now that things have come to this, Li Zongping can only bury those yellow weasels in the snow. He went down the mountain with a hunting gun on his back. After returning home, Li Zongping felt somewhat uneasy, always feeling like something was about to happen. After having dinner, he chatted with his old partner while sewing the shoe soles. He suddenly heard the crying of an old woman outside the window. Listening to it in the dead of night was very frightening. The sound was getting closer, as if it had reached the yard of the Li family. Li Zongping's wife got up to go take a look. She opened the door and was stunned at the sight. In the courtyard, there was an old lady kneeling with several dark objects in front of her. The old lady was thin with sharp features, pounding her chest and stamping her feet while crying. She was yelling, "My poor children!" Li Zongping's old partner stepped forward to ask what was going on, but the old lady completely ignored her, crying to herself, saying she wanted the Li family to pay with their lives. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, startling the two. It turned out that Li Zongping had come out and fired a shot into the sky. He held the gun, aiming it at the old lady, telling her to get out quickly or else he would kill her. Seeing this situation, his old partner hurried forward to stop Li Zongping. The old lady wiped away her tears and glared at Li Zongping fiercely, speaking each word slowly and harshly. "You dare to act tough after burning my child to death!" Li Zongping became even more enthusiastic when he heard that, as he went up to grab a gun to shoot her. Fortunately, his old partner stopped him. The strange old lady picked up the things on the ground, turned and walked out of the yard. When she was about to reach the door, she suddenly turned back, roaring angrily, "None of you will live through tonight!" Back in the house, the old partner saw that Li Zongping was hiding something, so he questioned him about what was going on. Li Zongping then told his old partner about what happened during the day. The old partner was shocked when she heard this. She said that thing was the most vengeful. The old lady today was probably transformed by the old yellow weasel. Li Zongping sighed heavily. He said he didn't do it on purpose. In the blink of an eye, he frowned again. He said he had fought all kinds of creatures for decades. If it dares to come again, he will destroy it. In the wee hours of the morning, the couple were so exhausted that they went to bed on the Kong. But that night, the firewood pile of the Li family inexplicably caught fire. The fire quickly spread to the entire house. Once someone discovered and extinguished the fire, everything that could have burned was already gone. Li Zongping and his wife both perished in the fire, mysteriously showing no signs of struggle. They were burned to charcoal while maintaining their original sleeping positions. If maternal love had an expiration date, how long do you think it would be? The deceased unfortunate woman gave a sorrowful answer. The story took place in 2001 in Dauphin County, Yanqing City, Jiangsu Province, China. In the village where Li Zongping lived, there was an ancient well. In the past, everyone in the village used to drink water from this well. Later, it was said that someone drowned in the well. The villagers stopped drinking water from that well, but many still use the water to do laundry and wash vegetables. The children in the village also play in the open space near the well. In particular, the boys often gather in groups of 3 or 5 by the well, engaging in water fights with homemade water guns. One day, Li Zongping and his friends finished their water fight and went home. He was scolded by his mother harshly and repeatedly emphasized not to play near the well. Li Zongping's clothes were all soaked, but he humbly admitted his mistake with a good attitude. Grandma stepped forward to defuse the situation. Every time Li Zongping gets scolded, Grandma always interrupts from the side. Li Zongping knows that Grandma will protect him, so he approached Grandma with a smile on his face. But that day, Grandma also became serious. She said that in the future, he must play less near the old well. Then she told Li Zongping a story. Grandma said that in recent years, people have often seen the shadow of a woman in the well. It is said that it is a ghost looking for a substitute. At that time, Li Zongping had not been born yet. There was a woman in the village who took her child to the well to wash clothes. When the woman was washing clothes, the boy was playing with a ball on the side. After the woman soaked the clothes, she realized that she had actually forgotten to bring the soap. Because her home was very close by, the woman asked the boy to play here first while she went back to get the soap. But unexpectedly, within those few minutes, something happened to the child. The woman jumped in without hesitation. She wanted to save her child, but she couldn't swim. Not only did she fail to rescue her son, she couldn't get out herself. When people found out, it was already the next day. Since then, there has always been someone hearing a woman's crying in the night. People say it is that mother, grieving because she couldn't save her own child. Li Zongping couldn't help but cry after hearing it. He felt that the mother and child were so pitiful. A long time passed, and Li Zongping never went there to play again. Gradually, he forgot about the whole thing. One day, a year later, Li Zongping was having fun with a few buddies. They unconsciously started playing with water guns by the well again. Li Zongping was having too much fun and he had completely forgotten what his grandmother had said. Just as he was drawing water by the well, a leather ball suddenly floated up to the surface of the water, and Li Zongping reached out to grab it. But the leather ball seemed to have a life of its own, deliberately moving closer and further away. Li Zongping leaned forward with all his might. He suddenly slipped and fell into the well. He flailed about frantically, drinking water non-stop. He gradually lost consciousness and sank downward. Just at that moment, Li Zongping suddenly felt a force lifting him up from under his feet. It turned out to be a woman swimming up from the bottom of the well. She held on to Li Zongping and pushed him upwards constantly. Li Zongping had not yet understood what was happening when he was pushed out of the water. He felt that there was still something supporting his feet, so he crawled up by grabbing onto the bricks at the wellhead. When he looked back into the well again, he found that there was nothing in the well. Li Zongping dragged and looked at his wet body, then staggered back. He didn't dare to tell the truth to his parents, saying he got wet from playing water fights. However, he told his grandmother the truth when he went to bed at night. Grandma sighed after listening and said that the unfortunate woman must still feel guilty about what happened in the past. She doesn't want her parents to suffer the same pain as she did. Li Zongping couldn't help but shed tears again. That night, he dreamed of the woman and her child playing happily together, just raising some ducks in the countryside. How did it become the netherworld envoy? Yang Kyo offended something in the grave. Li Zongping cannot make money telling stories. He switched to ecological farming. He raised more than 100 ducks. Every morning, he drives the flock of ducks to the river at the east side of the village for free-range farming. Li Zongping is thinking that after raising the ducks to a larger size, he can give back to the audience who subscribes to my channel. He stays by the river every day, with no one to chat with. Being alone, he inevitably feels a bit drowsy. Just as he is about to doze off groggily, a man slowly walks up behind him. Out of the blue, the man says, "Tonight at midnight." Li Zongping is startled by this, and quickly twists his head to look. He found that he didn't know this person at all. He repeated 3 times with a blank face, "I'll wait for you in the small grove at midnight tonight." After saying that, the person turned around and left. Li Zongping sat on the ground feeling bewildered. He saw the man walking into the grass. He stood up and wanted to go after him to ask clearly, but in the blink of an eye, the man disappeared without a trace. Li Zongping walked through the grass. He saw a graveyard in the woods. He was so scared that he shuddered. He quickly turned around and left. In the evening, Li Zongping rushed home with the ducks, had dinner, and went to bed early. But in the late night, Li Zongping's wife, Sheng Mei, was awakened by noise. She hurried to wake up her husband, only to find him not in bed. She saw clothes from the wardrobe scattered on the floor, and felt like there was a thief in the house. She heard footsteps dragging outside and felt extremely scared. Luckily, the sound faded away as if the person left the yard. She didn't dare to go outside, and decided to ask her husband about it the next day. Meanwhile, the Wu family brothers in the village, who made a living by fishing, also armed themselves and went on duty. To avoid affecting the villagers' water usage during the day, the brothers acted at night. It is said that fish are easier to catch with electricity at night when they are asleep. Just as old Wu was busy fishing, young Wu suddenly took a few steps back and bumped into his back. Old Wu turned around and complained to young Wu, but young Wu's face turned pale. He pointed at the trees by the river and stammered, saying that he seemed to have seen a ghost. Old Wu has always been bold and unafraid of superstitions. He followed the direction pointed by young Wu and searched over. Young Wu didn't dare to stay alone and followed his brother. The two of them walked while clearing the bushes and saw a dark figure standing in the graveyard among the trees. It seemed to be covered with tentacles swaying in the wind. Young Wu was scared to death, but old Wu insisted on taking a closer look. As they approached, they saw that the dark figure was actually Li Zongping. The things that looked like tentacles from a distance were just rags torn from his clothes. No matter what the two brothers called out to him, he didn't respond. Li Zongping had a blank look in his eyes, like a fool who had lost his soul. The Wu brothers saw that he was confused and disoriented, so they took his arms and led him back. It was not easy dragging him back. They called Li Zongping's wife to help him take off his tattered clothes. All three of them were stunned when they saw what was underneath. They could see that his whole body was covered in scratches, a sight that made one's scalp tingle. The Wu brothers saw that there was no need for assistance and left after greeting Shengmei. The next day, Li Zongping woke up and surprisingly didn't remember anything that happened last night. He stayed at home to recover for a month before his injuries started to improve. On that day, Li Zongping said he was feeling much better and wanted to go out for some fresh air. In fact, he wasn't feeling suffocated at all. He just wanted to figure out what was going on. He arrived at the cemetery, as described by the Wu family brothers. It was the same place he saw the strange man he had been chasing last time. He wandered around in circles for a while. An overgrown barren grave caught his attention. The tomb looked like it had been there for quite some time. The tombstone was only half intact, and there were many messy footprints around the grave. Li Zongping couldn't remember what had happened that night, but he could tell that the footprints on the ground were his own. As he approached the old grave, he discovered that there were duck footprints all over the tomb. It dawned on him that his ducks often foraged in the woods. Li Zongping probably realized that the scars on his body were likely related to his ducks leaving footprints on someone else's grave. Since then, he stopped raising ducks and returned to his old profession, starting to tell stories again. China has many more such small supernatural stories. Please continue. I am eager to hear more from you. Do you know why some people always have good luck and everything goes smoothly for them? But some people always seem to have a stroke of bad luck? It may be because he confused the story of the night-roaming deity and the night-roaming fiend. The story takes place in a small town in Juzhou, Hunan Province, China. In 2013, Li Zongping worked as a mechanic in the town. One day, he worked overtime and had barbecue with his colleagues outside. When they walked back to the village, it was already past 11 p.m. Li Zongping was always brave and not afraid of walking alone at night. As he walked to the edge of the village, he suddenly saw a figure in front of him, as if also heading towards their village. Li Zongping, feeling bored, thought it would be nice to have someone to walk back to the village with. So he quickened his pace to catch up. He called out from behind the person, "Brother, let's walk together and chat." However, the person completely ignored him and continued walking forward on his own. At this moment, Li Zongping also noticed something strange about the person. Not only was he dressed all in black, even his face and neck were unnaturally dark and eerie. Moreover, the person was estimated to be about 2.5 meters tall, which frightened Li Zongping, causing him to shiver. He sobered up a bit from the alcohol, slowed down his pace, and increased the distance between them. The strange person never looked back throughout, deliberately walking much slower. By the time Li Zongping walked back home, It was already past 1 in the morning. He rushed into the house in a panic, waking up his already sleeping wife, Shengmei. His wife grumpily complained a few words. After Li Zongping lay down, he was still puzzled. He told his wife about what happened on the road, but she panicked when she heard it. She said that her mother had told her about it before, and it was called the night roaming fiend. Encountering it could be life-threatening. However, Li Zongping didn't believe those things. He soon got drunk and fell into a deep sleep. The next day, Li Zongping was about to go out, but Shengmei advised him to stay at home. She couldn't stop her stubborn husband and asked Li Zongping to wait for a moment. She took out a triangular paper talisman and gave it to him. It turns out that Li Zongping's mother-in-law is the village shaman. Early in the morning, his wife went to make the call and made this thing according to the instructions of her mother. Li Zongping found it funny in his heart, but he couldn't resist his wife's insistence. He obediently hung it around his neck. He got on his beloved motorcycle and set off. He gradually increased the speed as he got onto the road. It's strange to say that on what should have been a lively weekend, there was not a single person on the road. So Li Zongping rode faster and faster. Suddenly he felt a burning sensation in his chest. Immediately he noticed a truck appearing out of nowhere in front of him, driving towards him. It was only about 10 meters away. Li Zongping panicked and didn't have time to think much. He stepped on the brakes frantically while turning the steering wheel sharply. Just at the moment when he turned towards the roadside, a truck whooshed past him, almost brushing against his body. Li Zongping's car also overturned. He fell heavily on the ground. Although there is no danger to his life, he has abrasions all over his body, and his right leg is also fractured. The truck stopped, and the driver hurriedly ran over, yelling, "Young man, why weren't you looking at the road while riding your bike?" While helping up Li Zongping, the driver said, "There are so many vehicles on the road. How can you ride a bike like this?" Li Zongping then realized that many vehicles on the road were actually avoiding him. And he, acting as if he couldn't see, was recklessly speeding on the road, zigzagging at high speed. Li Zongping is very clear in his heart that if the paper talisman on his chest hadn't warmed up, maybe he would never have seen the cars on the road until he died. After that incident, Li Zongping completely believed in the saying that one would be unlucky when encountering the night roaming fiend. But this clever ant cleverly resolved this matter. The night roaming fiend instantly became the night roaming deity. She also wishes everyone to have their bad luck turn into good luck, to have smooth sailing, and for all things to go well, just like this internet friend. Will one suffer if they offend the fairy clan? That's not necessarily the case. Handling it properly may actually bring good fortune instead of calamity. This incident occurred in Li Zongping's hometown in northeastern China. That was the winter of 1981, when most of the northern regions were already experiencing freezing cold weather. My daughter-in-law Shengmei is cooking. She is busy working and shouting at Li Zongping to go to the cellar to get 2 radishes. Li Zongping put on his cotton-padded jacket and lazily walked out. He was grumbling in his mouth, saying that eating radishes and cabbage every day was no different from being a rabbit. His family dug the cellar right in the backyard. Li Zongping, as usual, opened the lid and prepared to go down. Because the light was dim, he was very careful when climbing down the ladder. Just as he was about to reach the bottom, he suddenly heard a hissing sound from inside, which made his scalp tingle. He looked towards the sound and saw that the cellar was densely packed with snakes. Li Zongping was so scared that his face turned pale, and he almost fell off the ladder. He swiftly climbed up and rushed into the house, rolling and crawling. He accidentally bumped into Shengmei, who was walking towards him. Shengmei was muttering in her mouth, "Why are you dilly-dallying with the radish?" Li Zongping's legs were still weak as he stuttered, "There's a scary snake in the cellar." Shengmei casually said, "What kind of man are you? Getting so scared by just one snake?" She then walked to the entrance of the cellar and bent down to take a look inside. She saw all kinds of snakes crawling in the cellar, which was very scary to look at. Mei was so scared that she couldn't help but shudder and let out a loud scream. The two of them were puzzled. Shouldn't snakes hibernate in the winter? How did it end up here? Li Zongping, who had recovered at this moment, said he wanted to burn all these snakes. Mei quickly stopped him, saying that snakes are one of the 5 fairy clans, and they must not act recklessly. Then she asked Li Zongping to go get some mugwort to see if they could use smoke to drive them away. Li Zongping had no other way, so he lit a small bundle of mugwort as his wife suggested. He looked for a spot without snakes and threw it down. After a while, thick smoke emerged from the cellar, and the two stood far away watching. Strangely, not a single snake crawled out of the cellar. When the smoke cleared, the two walked cautiously to the cellar entrance and looked down. Just now, the snake is gone, leaving only a few strands of scattered mugwort. Li Zongping walked down holding a wooden stick. He couldn't figure out where these snakes had escaped from. Just as he was about to get radishes from the basket, he saw a pile of white things wriggling behind the box. He took a closer look. It was a big snake as thick as a bowl, but it didn't seem to be attacking. It was coiled there, barely breathing. Li Zongping didn't think much. He lifted the wooden stick and started hitting with it one after another. Li Zongping didn't stop until the big snake showed no sign of movement. He then stopped his hands. He slowly realized that he had caused trouble, so he silently buried the big snake with soil. He took 2 radishes and went back home. After returning home, he didn't say anything. He didn't even eat dinner, just crawled into bed and lay down. The next day, Mei sent the child to school. Before leaving, she reminded Li Zongping to get up and chop the firewood. But when she returned after sending the child to school, not a single piece of firewood had been chopped. She was instantly furious. She angrily stormed into the room and lifted up the blanket. But the scene before her nearly made her faint. I saw Li Zongping performing a highly difficult yoga pose with his eyes closed, sleeping soundly. Mei speculated that this is not a normal problem and quickly went to invite Wu the Blind from the east of the village. Wu the Blind is the famous Yin-Yang master Wu in the area. Things that others can see, he cannot see, but things that others cannot see, he can see clearly. Wu the Blind followed Mei into the room. When he looked at Li Zongping on the Kong, his face instantly turned dark. He said he saw a thick white snake coiled around Li Zongping. Before Mei could speak, Wu the Blind asked them if they had recently provoked the snake. Mei quickly explained to them the story of using wormwood smoke to drive away a group of snakes. Wu the Blind then followed on from Mei's words, and recounted how Li Zongping eliminated the giant white snake. Mei listened in shock. Wu the Blind continued, saying there was not a group of snakes in the cellar, only a giant white snake that was destined to gain enlightenment in their home. Unfortunately, Li Zongping mistakenly killed it. After listening, Mei realized that her husband had offended the fairy clan. She hurriedly asked Wu the Blind for help in resolving the situation. Wu the Blind calmly said, "Among the 5 great fairies, Lu Fairy is the most generous. She originally came to form a connection with your family. If it is not destroyed by Li Zongping, it will still face disembodiment, just suffering more physical pain. It can be considered as the final calamity." Wu the Blind is very familiar with the road, and quickly set up a proper hall entrance. The tablet bears the inscription, "Position of Chong Fairy." The snake is one of the 5 great fairy clans, Lu Fairy. Take the homophone of the radical or radical component of the Chinese character, snake. It's quite strange that as soon as the hall entrance was set up by Li Zongping, things took a turn for the better. After listening to Mei's narration, he obediently went to offer incense to Chong Fairy. Since then, the Li Zongping household has been continuously worshipping this Chong Fairy. Everything at home has been going smoothly, and life has become more prosperous. Is there really a chance to be reincarnated after death? This action by the barefoot doctor actually saved the 2 pairs of mothers and sons in the 2 worlds of Yin and Yang. In 1997, Li Zongping worked as a village doctor in a village in northeastern China. At that time, villagers would see barefoot doctors like him for medical treatment. In the evening, he was gathering and drying medicinal herbs. A flustered young man rushed in from outside. It turned out to be Wu Chang from the neighboring village. He said that his wife was having some difficulties giving birth and hoped that Dr. Li could go and check on Li Zongping. He asked Wu Chang to go back first and said he would go get the medical kit and come over shortly. He didn't have time to tend to the medicinal herbs in the yard. He carried the medical kit on his back and walked towards the neighboring village. Li Zongping, although not formally trained, is experienced. He knows a bit of both Chinese and Western medicine, and even has some knowledge of unconventional practices. As he walked along the small river between the two villages, Li Zongping saw a woman sitting by the riverbank, crying with her head lowered. He found it strange that someone would be crying by the river at this time. Li Zongping, who has always been charitable, approached and inquired about what was wrong with the woman. The woman said that she had something very important to attend to on the other side of the river, but she was severely afraid of water and dared not cross. Turns out the recent rise in the river caused the water level to exceed the bridge surface by nearly 30 centimeters. The woman mentioned that she was frail and unable to cross on her own. Li Zongping didn't consider it a big deal and agreed to carry her across the river. He took off his shoes and socks, lifted the woman on his back, and felt that she was very light. Her body also felt cold. During the crossing, the woman was visibly trembling. Li Zongping comforted her, telling her not to be afraid. When they reached the other side, he set the woman down. But the woman's complexion looked even worse. She bowed respectfully to Li Zongping and then turned around to leave. It seemed like she was heading towards the mountains upstream. Li Zongping was wondering in his heart when he lowered his head and saw a basket. This is the basket that the woman was carrying just now. She must have forgotten to take it with her. Li Zongping picked up the basket, wanting to call out to the woman. In the blink of an eye, the woman disappeared as soon as he looked up. He was in a hurry to go to Wu Chang's house to help with the childbirth and couldn't care about much else. He just carried the basket first, planning to find an opportunity to return it to her later. Li Zongping hurried to Wu Chang's house. Wu Chang's father quickly led him inside. Li Zongping casually placed the basket on the millstone in the courtyard. Inside, the midwife was busy and sweating profusely. The woman in labor has been exhausted from all the commotion and has a pale face, almost in a state of collapse. Li Zongping, seeing the situation, first gave the woman in labor some glucose, and then used several silver needles to help alleviate her pain. Just then, there was a bark from a dog outside the house. Li Zongping glanced outside and saw that the dog was barking non-stop at the basket on the grindstone. He felt that the dog's barking was unusual, and a thought crossed his mind. He hurriedly rushed out. The dog stared fiercely at the basket as if it saw something dangerous. Li Zongping already had some idea in his mind. He reached out to the basket and carefully lifted the floral cloth on top. Sure enough, as he had suspected, it was a dead infant. Li Zongping already had a good idea in his mind and picked up the basket. At the moment when the basket left the millstone, a loud cry of a child came from the house, followed by the midwife's voice announcing the birth of a son. Li Zongping completely understood that the woman by the river was not human at all. She was the mother of the dead infant in the basket. Both mother and child died during childbirth. There is a folk belief that ghosts cannot cross bridges. The woman was trying to send the child across the river for reincarnation. I didn't expect Li Zongping to put the child on a millstone. Millstones are believed to be able to suppress ghosts, so the child couldn't come out. The matter has been resolved, and Li Zongping sent the deceased infant to the home of village shaman Luo. It is said that this village shaman Luo can help with the souls of those children who died prematurely. If a stranger asks to borrow something from you, you must never refuse directly, because they might not be human. He is here to punish the unkind people. The story takes place on a winter night. At that time, Li Zongping and Sheng Mei had just fallen in love. They had just finished watching a movie together. They were chatting with each other while walking towards the bus station. Xiangmei said she didn't want to take the bus today and asked Li Zongping to walk her back. This way the two of them can chat a little longer. Li Zongping promptly agreed. Passing by a hotel called Xiangmei, he intentionally slowed down and said that he was a bit tired. Unexpectedly, the straightforward Li Zongping asked her to stand still and rest for a few minutes. Then he continued to take Xiangmei back home. Xiangmei was a little unhappy and said goodbye to Li Zongping. Li Zongping watched Xiangmei go upstairs before turning around and leaving. It's colder today. In order to get home sooner, he took a shortcut. Because it was his first love, he kept recalling his performance today on the way. He suddenly heard footsteps behind him and instinctively turned to look back. But there was nothing empty in the alley. He stopped and listened carefully, and the footsteps indeed disappeared. Thinking he misheard, he didn't pay much attention and continued walking. However, after just a few steps, he heard the footsteps again. This time, he became more alert and looked back sideways with his eyes. An old man suddenly appeared behind him, startling him. He couldn't help but exclaim, "I'll!" Then he grumpily said to the old man, "Uncle, you'll give people a fright acting like this." The old man quickly apologized to him. Li Zongping thought the old man was heading in the same direction, so they exchanged pleasantries as they walked. However, the old man did not walk alongside him, but followed behind. This made Li Zongping somewhat uncomfortable. After walking for about 10 minutes, Li Zongping suddenly felt that something was wrong. He could usually walk through this alley in 2 or 3 minutes, but today he had been walking for almost 20 minutes and still hadn't reached the end. He couldn't help but cast a glance at the old man. There does seem to be something suspicious when he took a closer look. In the midst of winter, the old man is only wearing a shirt, and yet he doesn't seem to feel cold at all. Li Zongping tentatively asked the old man if he was cold. The old man, with a gloomy face, said he was very cold and asked if he could borrow a coat to wear. Li Zongping felt the strangeness of the old man, and did not dare to answer casually whether to lend the coat or not. He hesitated for a moment, agreed to lend the coat to him first, wanting to see what would happen. Li Zongping took off the coat and instantly shivered from the cold. He raised his collar and handed the coat to the old man. Strangely, the old man disappeared directly. Looking at the empty alley, Li Zongping wondered if the old man was not human. Vanishing without a trace, he was unable to walk out of the alley for a while. He couldn't care about that much, hastily put on the coat, quickened his pace to leave. Just as he had walked out of the alley, the suddenly ringing phone startled him. It turned out to be his girlfriend, Xiangmei, calling. She said she called for over 20 minutes, but he didn't answer. Li Zongping explained what had just happened, and Xiangmei said that she called because of that. She said that the alley has been unsettled recently. An elderly person who lived nearby a few months ago. He had a heart attack while walking in the alley. He fell to the ground in pain. Many people passed by, but no one stopped to help him. The old man died helplessly like that. Later, I heard from the old man's son that his medicine was in his shirt pocket. If someone had helped him at the time, he wouldn't have left in pain. Since then, people often encounter ghosts hitting walls in the alley. Most of the people who encounter the ghost of that old man will fall ill and not recover when they go home. Li Zongping, however, has been perfectly fine since returning home. He often wonders why. What has happened to the inherently good people? What would have happened if I hadn't lent my clothes to the old man back then? The old man in the coffin suddenly sat up. He said, "The Netherworld envoy has caught the wrong person." The old lady actually experienced it herself. Go to the underworld. The story takes place in 2004 in a village located in Xinyang City, Hunan Province, China. Li Zongping and Xiangmei just got married and are living together with an old mother. The couple is very filial and doesn't let the old lady do any household chores. In the morning, Li Zongping went to call his mother to eat. He knocked on the door for a while, but there was no response. Feeling somewhat worried, He pushed open the door and entered the house. He saw that his mother had not yet gotten up, and a sense of ominous foreboding arose in his heart. The old lady remained motionless, devoid of any signs of life. Li Zongping trembled as he tentatively reached out his hand to investigate. His mother had already stopped breathing. Her body was cold through and through. She passed away so peacefully. The couple could only bear their grief in silence. They held a funeral for the old lady. Li Zongping is the only son and has to stay up alone at night. Tears have been streaming down his face non-stop. He still cannot come to terms with the sudden loss of his mother. His wife Shengmei feels sorry for him and asks him to take a break. She says she will take over and stay up with him in the latter part of the night. Li Zongping said his mother had been watching over him for 30 years, and he wanted to accompany her well in her last days. However, a strange thing happened at that moment. There was a howling sound coming from the old lady's coffin, sounding like it was coming from her throat. This frightened the two of them. Suddenly, the old lady sat up, and the couple didn't know if she was pretending to be a corpse. They stuttered and called out for their mother. But unexpectedly, the old lady started speaking and said she was fine, just a bit hungry and cold. The couple realized that their mother had come back to life and quickly helped her up. They assisted the old lady to the bed and prepared a hot meal for her. The old lady's complexion gradually improved, and she began to tell the couple about her strange experience. She said it seemed like the Netherworld envoy had mistakenly captured the wrong person. She was originally sleeping when she suddenly saw two dark figures standing by her bed. They muttered a few words to the old lady, and she uncontrollably sat up and silently followed the two figures. The old lady realized she had already passed away, and the Netherworld envoy had come to take her. Despite her deep reluctance, she was powerless to resist. After a while, she walked into a long line of people and arrived at a strange city gate. The city tower was tall, the walls were high, and the windows were small, clearly not inhabited by the living. There was a man wearing a tall hat sitting at the entrance, checking the identities of the people one by one. When it was the old lady's turn, she couldn't understand what he was saying. The man with the tall hat called the two dark figures aside, and they seemed to be arguing quietly. Then the dark figures took her and walked in the opposite direction. After a while, the dark figures led the old lady into a small dark room, muttered a few words, and then left. Shortly after, the small dark room started to fog up, and the old lady couldn't see anything. Waited until the fog slowly dispersed. Below her appeared a bright light. Within the light, her son and daughter-in-law were guarding a coffin. Inside the coffin was herself. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet gave way, and she fell downwards. After a moment of losing consciousness, she regained consciousness. The young couple couldn't believe it after hearing it. But the old lady came back to life, and they saw it with their own eyes. They had no choice but to believe. The next day, Li Zongping's mother was mistakenly captured by the Netherworld envoy and took a trip to the underworld, then came back to life. This incident quickly spread throughout the entire village. The following this little story is no less than The Legend of Ming Jiang Weeping at the Great Wall. I cried for the first time because of a female ghost. It is said that one relies on the mountains for food and on the water for drink. In the 1980s, residents of Duobaishan town, which means Many Treasures Mountain, all relied on a mine for their livelihood. At that time, Li Zongping was a young and inexperienced guy. He was arranged by adults to work as a miner in the mountains. The young man is quite good at handling things. The old miners at the mine all took good care of him. It was his first time going to work with two old miners. They arrived at a fork in the road, and the two old miners led him to go directly to the left. Li Zongping took a glance at the mine map on the wall and reminded the older brother that it would be closer to go from the right. But the two men casually said, "There's nothing wrong with the right tunnel, you don't need to go in there." They didn't give Li Zongping a chance to ask further questions, so he just worked quietly like that every day. One day, Li Zongping overslept and had to go to the mine alone. Feeling a little anxious when he reached the fork in the road, he thought that taking the right tunnel would save time, so he hurriedly went in and started running. After running for about 5 or 6 minutes, he suddenly noticed a figure in the tunnel. As he approached for a closer look, he found it was a woman. She was wearing a diagonally buttoned top, with a pale face and vacant eyes, and her body was even semi-transparent. This sight frightened Li Zongping so much that his legs went weak, and he could hardly move. However, the figure did not react at all. It took Li Zongping a long time to recover his senses. He then hurriedly ran out of the mouth of the tunnel. Back in the dormitory, he told everyone about the scene he saw just now. But it seems that he was the only one who was scared. Everyone else was surprisingly calm. He thought that people didn't believe him. Later, a fellow miner briefly told him that when this woman was alive, everyone knew her. After she passed away, her spirit stayed in that mine shaft and doesn't harm anyone. 2 months passed, and Li Zongping continued to go to work with his fellow miners as usual. But as soon as he reached the entrance of the mine, he saw many people running out. They were shouting while running, "Hurry out! Madame Bai has gone crazy!" They were all bewildered for a moment. At that moment, Li Zongping thought, "Wasn't it said that Madame Bai never harmed anyone?" Just as they curiously watched the people running outside, Madame Bai appeared beside them. She looked extremely terrifying, completely different from how she was before. She was covered in blood, with a fierce and sinister expression, staring malevolently at them. Before they could react, the mad Madame Bai rushed towards them. They started running frantically, but Madame Bai chased closely behind. At the instant they dashed out of the cave entrance, there was a loud bang as the mine collapsed. People were all shocked by this sudden situation. At this moment, the elderly master was said, "Madame Bai was trying to save us just now." Li Zongping couldn't hold back anymore, and he asked Master Wu, "Who is Madame Bai exactly?" It turns out that Madame Bai is the wife of Bai Gui. Because their families didn't approve, the two of them eloped here to make a living. The couple is very loving. Bai Gui goes to work at the mine every day. Madame Bai does the laundry and cooks at home. At that time, the workers' brothers at the mine often followed Bai Gui to have free meals. Then one day, bad news arrived. The mine collapsed, burying over 20 workers, including Bai Gui. Madame Bai was frantically trying to go in and rescue the trapped people. People were all trying to stop her from going in. But in the blink of an eye, Madame Bai broke free. She didn't hesitate to rush in despite the stones still falling in the hole. Then, a more violent collapse occurred, and Madame Bai never came out again. Master Wu tearfully recounted the incident. He said that since then, people have often seen Madame Bai's shadow in the mine. She has not given up on finding her husband. At this point, everyone also realized that today Madame Bai was behaving unusually. She seemed to have sensed the imminent landslide and scared everyone with her terrifying appearance. People were truly grateful from the bottom of their hearts to Madame Bai for building the graves for Bai Gui and Madame Bai at the foot of the mountain. This story is widely circulated. Later, this place was also renamed Madame Bai's tomb. Is having only one child good? Is it better to have multiple children? Parents probably have all considered this question. It is said that there are no unfilial sons beside a sickbed. In order to no longer take care of his paralyzed father, the 3 brothers in this story actually resorted to such despicable means. The story took place in the 1990s in Chao County, Hezi, Shandong Province, China. Old Wu in the village has passed away. All 3 sons are capable of earning money. The funeral was held very decently, but none of the 3 shed a tear. In the evening, the 3 brothers discussed how to spend the night, and unanimously agreed that since no one was around, they could skip the wake altogether. The 3 of them were afraid of being seen, and gossiped about if they went back home, so they fell asleep soundly on the big Kong in the room of the funeral parlor. The vast funeral parlor was empty, appearing very desolate. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps coming from the direction of the funeral parlor startled the second elder. He sat up and listened carefully. It sounded like someone was knocking on the coffin in the funeral parlor. He quickly woke up the eldest and the third eldest. The three brothers all heard the sound outside, and it was getting louder. They quickly got up, opened the door, and saw their father's coffin shaking violently, making a banging sound from inside. Just as the three were at a loss for what to do, with a loud cracking sound, one side of the coffin was torn open. Three of them quickly rushed up to press down on the coffin. As it seemed they could no longer hold it down, the third one shouted, "Elder brother, hurry and bring a rope." The eldest didn't dare to delay at all, fetched a long hemp rope. The three brothers hurriedly and messily tied up the coffin securely. However, the large coffin kept shaking non-stop. They were worried that the rope might break. The third brother suddenly thought of someone. He quickly asked the eldest to go and call Li Zongping, who made the coffin. Without saying a word, the eldest rushed out. The second and third brothers stayed behind, guarding the large coffin that kept swaying. They felt a chill running down their spines. They endured a difficult 20 minutes. The eldest finally brought someone over. Li Zongping is famous for being capable. Besides being skilled at making quality coffins, he also knows a little about astronomy, geography, and some unusual knowledge. When the other two saw him coming, they actually stepped forward to complain. Li Zongping said that the quality of the coffin he made was not up to standard. Li Zongping ignored them and went straight to the coffin. The three brothers were overwhelmed by Li Zongping's presence, and no one dared to speak. Li Zongping walked around the coffin, reached out to touch the lid, sighed deeply, and then turned to look at the three brothers. Disappointed, he said, "There's nothing wrong with this coffin. The problem might lie with you three." The three brothers looked at each other in silence. Li Zongping tapped on the lid solemnly. "If you don't speak the truth, I won't be responsible." Three people were sweating profusely, unable to look directly at Li Zongping. The third person stuttered and said, "There's nothing we can do." Li Zongping already sensed that something had happened and angrily pointed at them, shouting, "You've done something outrageous. Even if you were my own father, I wouldn't let you off the hook." The three of them were scared stiff, and the third person stammered as he recounted what had happened. Last winter, the patriarch of the Wu family suddenly had a stroke and became paralyzed, unable to take care of himself. The three sons discussed taking turns to take care of the elderly person, but all three are busy with work. The task of taking care of the elderly mostly falls on their daughters-in-law. Women are somewhat inconvenienced. After a few days, they become impatient. In the countryside, hiring a maid also raises concerns about gossip from others. The three brothers discussed and decided to send their father on his way early. The next day, they brought an old lady with them. The old lady said that this act was damaging the posthumous merit and asked the brothers not to be stingy with money. The three brothers didn't care about the money and readily agreed without hesitation. The old lady took a glance and old Mr. Wu said he still has over 3 years of lifespan. She took out a specially made candle, a piece of red string, and a paper talisman from her bag. She wrote down old Wu's astrological birth chart on the paper, rolled it up on the candle, and then tied it with the red string. The other end of the string is tied to old Wu's middle finger. She lit a candle, and a strange smell instantly filled the room. The candle burned shorter, and old Wu's complexion worsened. The three brothers looked at their father's painful expression with mixed emotions, only daring to glance at the slowly diminishing candle. When the candle burned all the way down, the old lady said, "He's gone!" The three men finally breathed a sigh of relief, but old Wu's mouth and eyes just wouldn't close. After Li Zongping listened, he was so angry he gritted his teeth and cursed them for losing all decency. It was strange that when they finished telling the story, old Wu's coffin also quieted down. Li Zongping said that the old man still cared about you guys and didn't want to do anything to harm you. He just wanted a clear understanding. Old Wu did not die a natural death. According to Li Zongping, he cannot be buried peacefully. He must be made to stand as if alive for 3 years, and during these 3 years, 3 meals must be offered to him daily. Gurin occasionally doubts Li Zongping's methods, but as soon as a meal is delayed, he will have a splitting headache. The truth of the story is not important. What's important is that as children, we should understand to repay kindness. It is only right and proper to take care of and accompany our parents in their old age until the end. We must not perfunctorily deal with things, and we absolutely must not lose all sense of decency, because everyone will grow old. Don't randomly buy strange toys for children. Even more so, do not attempt to use toys to replace your own company. Otherwise, you don't know what terrible things might happen. This story takes place in Tongdu District, Tianjin City. It is the personal experience of my colleague. Li Zongping works abroad year-round and can only return home once every 6 months. His wife Shengmei and son Little Shuai also miss him very much. Little Shuai ran up to his dad and asked if he brought any gifts. Li Zongping took out an exquisite clown doll and teased his son as he handed it to him. This was carefully selected by him for his son abroad. Little Shuai usually loves all kinds of dolls. He is fond of this exquisitely crafted, funny-looking clown. He treasures it as if it were a precious gem and cannot bear to put it down. Li Zongping also doesn't forget to tell Shengmei how good the dolls made abroad are. He stayed at home for more than a week, and then Li Zongping hurriedly left the country for work again. After another half a year, he came back home on vacation, but his son did not come out to greet him. Shengmei said that Little Shuai has been acting very strangely recently. He stays in his room all day, talking to himself while holding onto that clown doll. Shengmei took him to the hospital for a checkup, but no issues were found. The doctor said that having no father figure around for a long time can have a certain impact on a child's character development. Li Zongping feels very guilty and wants to take his son out to relax. But Little Shuai completely ignores him. Li Zongping reached out and gave Little Shuai a pat on the shoulder. To my surprise, Little Shuai suddenly turned around and let out a fierce scream, shouting not to touch him. At this moment, Little Shuai is already severely emaciated, with sunken eye sockets, and his facial features are distorted due to anger. Li Zongping's heart is being twisted like a knife. He is trying to communicate with his son again. He gently took the clown from Little Shuai's hand. But Little Shuai suddenly shivered all over. He kept roaring at the top of his voice. Shengmei quickly said not to use his clown. She tried many times with no success. Li Zongping felt that this might be a psychological illness and could only leave the room with his wife. He apologized to Shengmei while comforting her, saying that he would ask someone to find an expert to check on her tomorrow. But what he didn't expect was that a more bizarre thing happened that same night when Shengmei got up to go to the bathroom. She walked into the living room and heard strange noises coming from the kitchen. When she entered the kitchen, she saw her son, Little Shuai, squatting in front of the fridge eating. She asked him if he was hungry, but what she didn't expect was Little Shuai turning around. She saw her son gnawing on a piece of raw meat with blood on it. She was so scared that she collapsed and sat on the ground. Little Shuai at this moment looked like a terrifying clown, grinning and rushing towards his mother. Fortunately, Li Zongping heard the noise and ran out, hugging Little Shuai tightly. Little Shuai struggled desperately, shouting, "Look, I want to eat meat! I want to eat meat!" Early next morning, the couple took Little Shuai to the hospital. The expert first injected the child with a sedative. Then the doctor pulled Li Zongping aside to analyze the child's condition. He said that the preliminary judgment is that the child lacks fatherly love and places too much emotional reliance on toys, leading to psychological autism. Li Zongping is very self-blaming, saying that he thought giving the child more toys could make him happy. He casually mentioned that clown doll, but the expert deemed it very important. Li Zongping hurried home and brought the doll over. The expert sternly asked him if the doll was bought near Mexico. Li Zongping asked him in surprise how he knew. The expert said that he had been there for medical exchange before. This clown is a very evil thing. indigenous people in Mexico make these dolls. They use almost entirely real human skin and hair. The locals use them to sacrifice and nurture souls, especially the souls of children who died prematurely. Clowns are usually placed in cemeteries. If people come into contact with them for a long time, they will absorb people's vitality and turn into evil spirits. Local dark wizards will use these evil spirits to perform a ritual to summon demons. When Li Zongping heard this, he immediately became nervous. He pleaded with the experts to help save his son. The experts said that these were unfounded legends and advised Li Zongping to spend more time with his child. The closer these things are to the child, the better. Li Zongping, holding the clown doll he bought, felt angry and guilty. In the middle of the night, he found an empty space and lit a torch. It emitted a strong foul smell. After about 10 minutes, the clown doll turned into a pile of ashes. It's quite strange that little Shuai felt much better the next day, and Li Zongping resigned to stay at home to accompany his wife and children. Little Shuai quickly turned back into a lively and cheerful boy. More and more widow-style marriages in today's society. The mental health of left-behind children is also easily neglected. This YouTuber hopes to inspire people who strive outside. Do not forget what you are striving for. Spending more time with family to give children a truly complete home. This is a heart-wrenching story. The domestic violence man buried his son, who was in a feigned death state. The child, after waking up, struggled desperately for 3 days. The outcome is truly heartbreaking. The story takes place in Danfeng County, Shanxi Province in 1995. Old Li is idle all day long. The villagers all look down on him. His behavior has made life difficult for his wife Damiai and sons Li Zong and Li Ping. Old Li got upset outside and kicked open the door when he came home. He shouted that he was hungry. He asked his 2 sons, who were eating, to move aside. He picked up a bowl and started eating himself. Just as he took a bite, he spit it out with a "pu" and roared angrily. "Why is it cold?" He got so angry that he flipped over the table. Damiai said with a look of grievance, "The chimney is blocked. No one is fixing it. I can't light a fire." Old Li, hearing this as if it was blaming himself for not working, went up and slapped Damiai in the face. Damiai knew Old Li's temper and was afraid of affecting the 2 children, so she had to bear with it. Brother Li Zong quickly told their mother, "Mom, let me and my brother fix the stove. Don't ask him to do it." Old Li vented his anger, took off his clothes, and went back to his room to sleep. Damiai looks helpless and can only take 2.5 children to check the chimney. The mother and her 3 children kept fiddling until evening, finally making the smoke come out. But the next day, a big incident happened. The 2 children, who never overslept, could not be awakened even by knocking on the door. Damiai had to push the door open with all her strength. But as soon as she entered the room, she was stunned. The room was filled with thick smoke. 2 children lay on the heated brick bed, their faces turning blue. Apparently, when the chimney was cleaned yesterday, something went wrong, and smoke leaked into the room. Damiai cried out in distress, calling for Old Li to come quickly. Old Li entered the children's room, looking displeased. He walked into the room and was stunned by the scene before him. Although he had wanted to scold a few words, he couldn't. Damiai turned around and blamed Old Li, saying it was all his fault for not fixing the chimney. Old Li dared not get angry this time. The 2 of them carried the child to the courtyard, trying to pinch and press. Damiai's panic cry attracted many neighbors. Everyone stepped forward to help, and finally managed to revive the eldest, Li Zong. But the second eldest, Li Ping, did not get saved. There is no tradition in the area to build a tomb for children. Old Li dug a hole behind his house and buried Li Ping's coffin there. Damiai cried for 2 days and 2 nights. Old Li, feeling annoyed, beat her twice. Finally, he had a peaceful sleep on the 3rd night. But in the middle of the night, Damiai was awakened by a strange noise. She told old Li that it sounded like someone scratching the door, and asked him to get up and take a look. But old Li had just fallen asleep and was awakened again. He angrily scolded Damei and, concerned that something might have happened to their eldest son, reluctantly got up to check by himself. He opened the door, but saw nothing. The sound seemed to be coming from outside the courtyard, sometimes near, sometimes far, causing anxiety in those who listened. After confirming that their eldest son was fine, Damei went back to the room, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right. For 3 consecutive days, she kept hearing this sound. She felt that it was her youngest son scratching the coffin lid. On the 4th day, Damei couldn't stand it anymore, but old Li remained unresponsive. So she decided to dig open the coffin herself to take a look. No matter how old Li tried to stop her, it was useless. He resorted to his old tricks again. He thought that a good beating would make her behave. But this time, Damei is determined to clarify things. She took an iron shovel and went to the back of the house, digged like crazy, wait until she dug out and opened the shallow coffin. Damei's heart felt like it was shattered, and she froze on the spot. Li Ping's expression was fierce, his whole body stiff, and his hands still in a scratching position. The fingers were so worn out that even the skin and flesh were worn through, causing distortion due to excessive force. And inside the coffin lid, there were row after row of bloody scratch marks. Damei's heart was torn apart. She knew her son was still alive, but despite hearing his voice, she didn't go to save him. Her heartbreaking cry echoed throughout the entire village. Since then, Damei went insane. She carried a piece of wood in her arms, and told everyone that this was her son, and he was still alive. And old Li, not long after, was beaten to death by a few thugs due to gambling debts. The eldest son, Li Zong, went to another city and changed his name to Li Zongping. On the 7th day after death, she returned for revenge. Only because her mother-in-law treated her like a servant during her lifetime, which pushed her to a dead end. The story takes place in Tunbeo Town, Liaoning Province in 1988. Every morning, Li Zongping would stand outside his neighbor's courtyard wall early. It turns out he was waiting for the young widow Shengmei. These two are indeed unlucky. They were originally a childhood sweethearts. But Shengmei's father despised Li Zongping for being an orphan and forced his daughter to marry the short-lived Wu Chong. After Wu Chong's death, Li Zongping rekindled hope. Every morning, he would wait for Shengmei to work in the fields together. On that day, as usual, Li Zongping waited to see Shengmei, but Shengmei came out with a sad face, keeping her head down and walked away without looking at him. When Li Zongping turned around, he saw Shengmei's annoying mother-in-law standing at the door staring at them. This old lady was very malicious, always treating Shengmei like a slave, especially became even more cruel after her son's death. In the evening, Li Zongping was drinking alone at home, feeling depressed. He heard the miserable cries from next door, and knew that Shengmei had been beaten again by that old lady. But after all, Shengmei is still the wife of the Wu family, and Li Zongping is also powerless. The villagers all know that he is a pitiful and capable person. Some people have also tried to persuade Shengmei's mother-in-law to reconcile with the two children, but they were all scolded out by the old lady. This morning, something happened at Shengmei's home. When her mother-in-law got up and saw that breakfast was not ready, she immediately rushed to Shengmei's room while angrily muttering. She pounded on the door with all her might, but there was no response for a long time. In a fit of anger, the old lady kicked the door open. But when she entered, she was stunned. Shengmei had already taken her own life with drugs. Her body was cold and stiff. Fate was truly unfair to her. She had finally accepted her fate and was living with Wu Chong, but Wu Chong had already passed away. Now, she not only cannot be with Li Zongping, but also has to work like a slave every day. She couldn't bear it for a moment and attempted to take her own life. After Shengmei's death, the mother-in-law became happy. She quickly told her son and Shengmei that there was someone underground taking care of her son. But the story did not end there. On the 7th day after Xingmei's death, a woman who went to visit the Wu family ran out of the house in terror. She said something major had happened at the old lady's house. After hearing this, all the villagers rushed to the Wu family's house. When the crowd pushed the door open, they smelled a strong scent of blood. Xingmei's younger uncle was lying on the steps. It looks like he was trying to crawl out, but it's clear that he has already died. A few brave villagers cautiously went around and pushed the door to enter the house. I saw Xingmei's younger siblings dead in the kitchen. She was disemboweled, and it was a gruesome sight. When people entered the old lady's room, but people only saw a large pool of blood on the bed. Suddenly, a sound came from the wardrobe in the room, scared the villagers to tremble. The courageous village head stepped forward and carefully opened the wardrobe door. It turned out to be Xingmei's cousin's son curled up in the wardrobe, trembling. Everyone quickly took the child to the village chief's house and kept comforting him. After the child calmed down a bit, a woman who was usually quite familiar with him started asking what he had seen. The child cried and said he saw Xingmei killing them one by one. Everyone present was stunned, because they all witnessed Xingmei's death. According to the child's description, at that time, he and his dad were playing with toys in the room when suddenly they heard Mom's screams coming from the kitchen. They ran to the kitchen and saw Mom covered in blood collapsing. The deceased Xingmei's feet were off the ground, hanging in the air. The nails were swinging wildly like steel knives. The child's father ran over and was immediately scared silly, without waiting for him to react. He was slapped by Xingmei and turned into a bloody mess. Xingmei did not harm the child and floated directly into the old lady's room. The villagers didn't know what to say because everyone was very clear about how this family usually treated Xingmei. The village chief brought some people to Xingmei's grave site. They found that the grave had already been dug open. Everyone looked closer and was almost scared out of their wits. The person lying in the coffin was not Xingmei, but an unrecognizable old lady. Everyone quickly called the police. But the case has not been solved. But some people speculate that this was done by Li Zongping. Perhaps he learned about Xingmei's tragic death. He returned with her corpse to seek revenge. Because the wounds on the old lady's family looked like they were inflicted by Li Zongping normally, caused by the steel claws he used to make hemp bags. The old lady may have died unjustly. And it seems that the younger uncle has repeatedly insulted Xingmei. The younger siblings naturally hate her and won't give her any good treatment. So they have all brought disaster upon themselves. But all of this is just speculation by the villagers because after that incident, Li Zongping disappeared and no one knows exactly what happened. But later on, some people said they saw Li Zongping and Xingmei in another city. However, these are just rumors. People renting houses and buying second-hand furniture should be cautious. You must make sure to clarify the source of the furniture. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what terrible things might happen. The story takes place in Baiyun District, Guangdong Province. A second-hand furniture market in Zhenjiu village. Li Zongping and his wife Xingmei went to the market to look around on the weekend. They want to furnish their newly rented house with some furniture. The bald boss warmly welcomed them, chatting with them while leading the two into the shop. Xingmei likes dressing up and wants to buy a bigger wardrobe. Xingmei likes to dress up more and wants to buy a larger wardrobe. The bald boss recommended several good quality wardrobes, and Li Zongping was somewhat tempted. However, he was called by Xingmei to another wardrobe. She said she likes this style. So he asked the boss about the details of this wardrobe. But the boss was hesitant and seemed reluctant to sell this one. The boss strongly recommended several others instead. Li Zongping knew that savvy businessmen would want to make more money and would not want to sell something of high value. So, he insisted on buying the one his wife had set her heart on. After the wardrobe was delivered, Xingmei liked it very much. Being clean, she wiped both the inside and outside. But after water got inside the cabinet, it emitted a strange odor. Xiaomei thought it might have been moldy from not being used for too long. She decided not to put clothes in it for now, and planned to air it out first. The tired couple went to bed early that night to rest. But in the middle of the night, Xiaomei was awakened by strange noises. The sound was like a woman crying, sounding very close to them. She quickly woke up her husband, Li Zongping, and sat up to listen carefully. It seemed that there was indeed a sound. Both of them felt that the sound was coming from the wardrobe they bought during the day. Although it was scary, Li Zongping still mustered up the courage and reached out to open the cabinet door. But the cabinet was empty, and the sound had disappeared. The two of them thought it might have been noise from outside, so they felt relieved. Just as Li Zongping was about to close the cabinet door, he noticed that Xingmei's expression was not right. He turned his head to look inside the cabinet, which was empty just now. Suddenly, a woman who had been hanged appeared. She had obviously been dead for a long time, and her whole body was decomposed, oozing disgusting pus. The two of them were so scared that they let out a loud scream and took several steps back. But that terrifying woman vanished in a flash. The couple understood in their hearts that they had seen something dirty. Early the next morning, Li Zongping ran to the furniture store. He walked in and immediately started yelling at the bald boss, accusing him of selling them a haunted cabinet. The boss looked aggrieved and said he didn't know it would turn out like this. So, he started talking about the history of this cabinet. Last year, he was collecting old furniture outside, and a family gave him this cabinet, saying they couldn't bear to keep it at home because it made them sad. He heard that the old couple had a beautiful daughter who was in a relationship with a migrant worker from another place. The daughter was locked in her room by the elderly couple to prevent them from seeing each other. They forcibly arranged a marriage for their daughter, but the girl was heartbroken and refused to comply, even preferring to die. In the end, she hanged herself in the wardrobe that her parents had prepared as part of her dowry. It's strange because the wardrobe couldn't even support a person, yet somehow she was hanged. The bald boss refunded the money, and Li Zongping said they should deal with the wardrobe themselves. Li Zongping had someone throw the wardrobe into a ditch outside the village, but it seems like it was later picked up by a second-hand landlord. No matter how bad the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is, they shouldn't do such a thing either. Otherwise, it really is a lose-lose situation. The story takes place in 2005 in Jilin province. The Li Zongping family lives in Xiaohua village. Villagers can hear it every day. His daughter-in-law, Xiaomei, screams and curses every day, but not at others. It is precisely Li Zongping's mother who is also unfortunate. She became a widow in her 30s and raised Li Zongping all by herself. It was not easy to finally marry a wife. That's why their son, Li Zongping, has always been submissive to his wife, Xiaomei, dare not speak loudly. It is said that the bad relationship between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law is often partly due to men being too weak. Li Zongping wanted to step forward to speak up for his mother, but he was scared off by a roar from his wife. The relationship between the Li family's mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is known to everyone in the village, and many villagers feel sorry for the old lady. Every time villagers see her, they will console her. The old lady is well aware of keeping family problems private. Every time she would say that her son and daughter-in-law treat her very well, just occasionally having some minor disagreements. The appearance of the old lady makes the villagers feel sad. But recently, something happened that the villagers couldn't bear to see. That day, Wu Chang's wife was returning from her parents' home, and as she passed by the small grove at the village entrance, she saw a woman burning joss paper in the grove, even though it was not a special holiday or occasion. She peered closer and realized that the woman was Li Zongping's wife. She found it even more strange, as the Li family had few members, and she wondered why they would need to burn joss paper. Curiosity drove her to slowly move closer. I only saw Xiaomei burning paper while muttering, "Here you go! All for you! You old immortal!" The name she was muttering is actually her mother-in-law's. Later, Wu Chang's wife heard someone say that this kind of behavior is meant to shorten the old lady's lifespan, which is a malicious curse. It's not known if it's related to this incident. Since then, the health of the Lee family's old lady deteriorated. Before long, she passed away. Lee Zomping, a good-for-nothing, didn't even properly handle the funeral. He hastily buried his mother. Not long after, strange events occurred in the Lee family. Sheng Mei, who was originally very proud, suddenly fell ill with a strange disease and went insane. She would grab people and shout in terror, "Help me! She's going to take me away!" Everyone thought that her mother-in-law hadn't passed away and was following her every day, planning to take her to the underworld for judgment. At first, everyone didn't pay much attention, speculating that she couldn't bear the condemnation of her conscience. But later, people found that it didn't seem like an act, as if there really was something following her. There are also villagers' rumors that several times at night, they saw the old lady standing at the Sheng Mei door as if calling someone. But when such things happen, no one in the village feels sorry for her. This situation has been going on for a long time without any improvement. Instead, it keeps getting worse. The villagers all avoid her when they see her. They only know that she complains about the cold even during the hottest days of summer, shivering in her thick coat. Then one day, she suddenly ran out of the village. She never came back again. Neither the mother-in-law nor the daughter-in-law should be blamed. One who bullies others when alive. One who is unrelenting even after death. Why should women make things difficult for other women? If you ask me, the person who should be punished the most for this is. Actually, it's Lee Zomping who did nothing. What do you think? He reveals a creepy smile as soon as he falls asleep. A 4-year-old child claimed to be playing at the kindergarten on the rooftop, only to realize that he had been possessed by a spirit. The story took place in 2014 at Jinjiago village in Rizhao, Shandong province, where houses were going to be renovated. People all moved out to find alternative housing for the time being. The Lee Zomping family of 3 is in the process of moving. Son Little White is 4 years old and attends preschool in the kindergarten class. Due to the move, he is temporarily not going to school. Because of the tight schedule, Lee Zomping rented a house in an old neighborhood. After moving in, the couple was busy tidying up. The whole family went to bed early that night. Little White fell asleep as soon as he touched the pillow. But on the first night they moved in, something strange happened. Lee Zomping was woken up by bursts of laughter. It turned out to be his own son beside him. Little White was muttering something with a smile on his face. He had his eyes half open and his smile looked a bit eerie. Lee Zomping thought he was just having a pleasant dream, so he didn't take it to heart. But the child remained in that state for a long time. The next morning, Little White still hadn't woken up by nearly 10 o'clock. Lee Zomping told his wife Sheng Mei about the incident where their son laughed all night last night. Sheng Mei said, "Then let him sleep a little longer." But by noon, Little White still hadn't woken up. Sheng Mei was afraid that he would be hungry, so she woke him up and asked what lovely dream he had last night. Little White, however, said that he went to the rooftop kindergarten to play last night. Sheng Mei thinks that the child must be missing his friends from the kindergarten. She said that after settling in a few days, she will find a new kindergarten nearby for him. To celebrate the move, Lee Zomping cooked several delicious dishes for lunch, but Little White was feeling down. He suddenly didn't want to eat the dishes he used to enjoy. The couple felt that their child was acting a bit unusual and asked if he was feeling unwell. But Little White said he still wanted to go to the rooftop kindergarten, and even mentioned a bunch of other kids' names. The couple were very puzzled about how their son suddenly mentioned so many other kids' names. And they live on the top floor, so there can't be any daycare upstairs either. It's getting late. Little White fell asleep as soon as she laid down again, which is totally different from her usual state when she needs to be coaxed to sleep for a long time. And he just fell asleep for a while, and then he turned back into the state he was in last night. Sheng Mei is a little worried. Lee Zomping still thinks the child is dreaming and advises his wife not to overthink it. Mei sees her son's condition getting worse and wants to wake him up. But no matter how they call, the child can't be woken up and remains in that strange state. Now the couple is getting anxious. The child's condition is becoming more and more frightening. Mei said to let her husband go to the rooftop to have a look. Li Zongping hurriedly rushed out. But when he climbed to the rooftop, he was stunned. The passageway was blocked by a thick iron door, obviously not open for a long time. He looked through a rusted hole on the iron door. There are indeed many play facilities for children on the rooftop, exactly as described by his son. Suddenly, he saw several dark figures on the rooftop, like a group of children playing. But those dark figures clearly were not human. Just as he was starting to feel scared, he saw the shadow of his son, Little White, in the dark figures, in a semi-transparent state. Li Zongping was very puzzled but guessed that his son's situation was related to these ghostly shadows, so he loudly called out his son's name. While shouting and trying hard to pull the door lock, he couldn't open the iron door no matter how hard he tried. Li Zongping is experienced and knowledgeable. He knew it was the child's soul. If he couldn't call his son back, his son wouldn't wake up. After a while of struggling, he called the property management office. 2 night shift security guards quickly arrived. Li Zongping said his son was on the rooftop and asked them to open the door. The 2 security guards found it impossible. But he still opened the door. When Li Zongping pushed the iron gate open and took a look, only the entertainment facilities for the children were left. The security guards said that this was left behind by the owner, who used to run a kindergarten, and it hasn't been touched for many years. Li Zongping quickly ran back home and saw that his son had already woken up. Little White said he was just playing at the kindergarten and ran back home when he heard his dad calling. Li Zongping told the elders at home about this. The elders said that the things from those kindergartens, if played with by children a lot and then left in unattended places, will develop spirituality and attract the lonely souls of dead children and ghosts to come and play. Little White was too lonely and was lured away by those little ghosts to play together. Later, the elder put a longevity lock on Little White, saying it could suppress the child's soul. It's strange to say, but after that, Little White never had that dream again. Audience, do you wear an amulet and red underwear in your zodiac year? Several boys won others' amulets just by winning. They unexpectedly encountered strange events and ended up in danger. Welcome to watch the new collection of horror short stories. Don't forget to subscribe, dear audience. The story takes place in 2004. That year, I was a senior in college preparing for the entrance exam. I would go to the library every day to study. One day, my girlfriend Mei asked me to go hiking with her, but I refused her for the first time. The next second, she grabbed my ear. I told Mei that this year is my zodiac year, so I shouldn't do anything dangerous. Then I told her about a childhood memory that I had never wanted to bring up. When I was 12 years old, my mother gave me a talisman. She said this year is my zodiac year, so she gave me this talisman to ensure my safety. Because of this, I was laughed at by my little buddies in the village. At that time, I was playing marbles with them, while unknowingly exposing half of my underwear with my butt sticking out. This scene made Doggy from the village see it, and he kept teasing me by pulling my pants. He said I was wearing such sexy red underwear, and suggested that I might as well buy a leopard print one. I angrily explained that my mom made me wear it. This year is my zodiac year. After saying that, I even took off the amulet to show them. And I even boasted, saying that there is a talisman inside that can ward off evil spirits and catch jiangshi. After this round of manipulation, I successfully fooled them. Doggy not only stopped making fun of me, but also reached out to try to snatch my amulet. I quickly spoke up to stop him. If I lost it, I would definitely get a beating when I got home. Doggy sees that forceful snatching is not working, so he plans to use clever tactics instead. He asked me to use marbles to gamble with him. If I win, I have to give him the amulet. If I lose, he will give me 3 comic books. I looked down at the amulet in my hand, feeling a bit hesitant. Seeing my expression, Doggy took the opportunity to persuade me. I admit that 3 comic books are indeed very tempting, so I agreed to this bet. Maybe I was afraid of showing my red underwear again, so I actually lost to the most inexperienced doggy in the village. Watching them fight over the amulet, I felt particularly panicked. At dinner time, I deliberately raised my collar higher. Fortunately, my mother didn't notice. The thing is that everything started happening after I lost my amulet. That day, Doggy and I went to the forest to roast sweet potatoes. When we were preparing to make a fire, Doggy suddenly found something. He actually found a coffin. So we ran over to check it out. The coffin was slanted in the ground. It seemed to have been washed down by heavy rain. The end of the coffin that was exposed in the soil had its lid partially opened, emitting a foul smell. However, Doggy was not repelled by the odor. His eyes were fixed firmly on the coffin. At this moment, he turned his head and said he wanted to see what was inside the coffin. Upon hearing this, I felt very shocked, sensing that Doggy was acting a bit unusual today. So I decided to leave, but Doggy started lifting the coffin lid with his hands. And he even used provocative tactics to mock me as a coward. He said I only deserved to wear red underwear, and that I was not a real man at all. This move really worked on me. I pointed my finger at Doggy and asked who he was looking down upon. And then I joined him in the procession of lifting the coffin board. Because we were so focused on lifting, we didn't notice the crack that appeared in the coffin board. The next second, Doggy flew out and was holding a broken coffin board in his hand. Although he didn't fall out of the ring this time, he was still thrown hard. He casually threw the coffin lid to the side, and then got up and walked over to the coffin. Doggy said he wanted to go in and take a look. After saying that, he crawled in through the gap and then asked me to come in as well. Although I was afraid, I followed him in to maintain a manly image. The coffin was pitch black. I quickly lit a match. After the match was lit, we discovered a female corpse lying inside. The appearance of the female corpse was unusually frightening, and her eyes seemed to be staring at us. This scene scared both me and Doggy so much that we screamed. The matches in Doggy's hands fell down, and following the light from the falling matches, we discovered that there was a baby under the female corpse. Seeing this, I can no longer care about preserving any masculine image. I immediately scrambled out of the coffin, eagerly competing with Doggy. Our panic-stricken friends ran over to us. 2 friends outside asked us what we saw. Doggy told them about the situation inside the coffin. At that moment, a friend handed us 2 roasted sweet potatoes. Looking at the wrinkled roasted sweet potato, Doggy couldn't help but think of the dried corpse he had just seen. Who can still eat this? So he ran to the side and started vomiting. When I got home, I didn't even have dinner. I had a nightmare when I slept at night. I dreamt that I was trapped inside a coffin. Suddenly, someone next to me kept hitting the coffin lid. It was a pregnant woman. She kept yelling to be let out. I was so scared that I covered my eyes. Suddenly, I heard my mom calling me. Then I woke up. My mom touched my forehead and said I had a fever. At this moment, my grandma suddenly discovered that the amulet on my neck was missing. So I told them about the amulet that I lost. After listening, my grandma told us that she needed to go out for a while. Soon after, Grandma came back. She had gone to Doggy's house to retrieve my amulet. After Mom put the amulet on me, my high fever slowly subsided. During lunch, Iron Egg suddenly came to my house and said that Doggy had died. I looked very shocked upon hearing this, and cold sweat started flowing down immediately. On the way to the incident involving Doggy, Iron Egg said that Doggy fell from a tree and died. After Iron Egg and I arrived at the scene of the incident involving Doggy, it was already surrounded by curious villagers. I pushed my way into the crowd and found his parents kneeling beside his body, weeping in sorrow. Doggy's death was particularly bizarre. he was actually stabbed to death by the coffin board that he broke. After this incident, Doggy's grave was buried at the spot where the accident occurred. After listening to me recount the story, Hongmei apologized to me. When I returned to my hometown to visit Doggy, the grass in front of his grave had grown very tall. Do you close the bedroom door when you sleep at night? A rural girl's bedroom only has a curtain and no door. One night, a monster came to find her while she was sleeping. Welcome to watch the new horror story. This happened in 2014. I was only about 10 years old that year because of my parents' work. I have been living with my grandmother since I was young. My grandfather passed away very early. There are only 2 people in the family, my grandmother and me. My grandmother is very kind to me, but she can be a bit naggy about many things. She is afraid that she might not take good care of me, and it would cause complaints from my mother. Sometimes the more you fear something, the more likely it is to happen. I remember that after dinner, I played with the children in the village by the street. Grandma cleaned up the dishes and chopsticks, then told me she was going to my eldest aunt's house for a visit. Grandma was gone for 2 or 3 hours. It was already dark, and she still hadn't come back. The child I was playing with had gone home, leaving only those 2 elderly people chatting there. After waiting for a while, and still not seeing Grandma return, I went back home. When I arrived home, I purposely locked the front gate. Because I was scared of the dark, I didn't wash up and just went straight to bed. Before going to sleep, I purposely glanced at the alarm clock. It was only 9:10 at that time. Just a short while after lying down, I heard some activity in the living room. It was the sound of footsteps, just unusually light. At first, I thought it was my grandmother coming back. But then I realized her footsteps couldn't be this light. Just as I thought it was a thief, someone suddenly started calling out a person's name. His voice was particularly eerie, with a long drawn-out trailing tone that gave me the shivers. At this moment, 2 feet suddenly appeared under the curtain in my bedroom. Immediately after, the curtain was lifted. When I saw his appearance clearly, my heart felt like it was hit by a heavy hammer. It was an old man with bulging green eyeballs all over his body. I was so scared that I quickly tucked my head into the blankets, my body uncontrollably trembling, and tears continuously streaming down my face. The old man kept calling out a name while pacing around the room. After about 2 minutes, he pulled back the curtain and returned to the outer room. Sensing that he had left the bedroom, I got up, opened the window, and jumped out. When I ran to the street, I began to cry loudly. It was only then that I realized I had forgotten to put on my shoes. I arrived at the place where we played during the day, and found that the 2 old people had not returned home yet. So I cried and told them about the situation just now. Seeing this, the few people immediately called their 2 sons over. They searched through both my kitchen and the bedroom where I was sleeping with sticks in hand, but they did not find the old man with bulging green eyes that I had described. So they thought that I might have just been dreaming earlier. I said with tears that I wasn't dreaming, and I recounted in detail what had just happened. I heard the old man shouting a person's name, and the old man said that was my grandmother's name. Now they also believe that I am not dreaming. They stayed with me to wait for my grandmother, but unexpectedly ended up waiting for my uncle. Uncle said my grandmother had a heart attack at my eldest aunt's house. She is currently in the hospital. Then Uncle rode a motorcycle and brought me to the hospital. As soon as I saw my grandmother, I cried. I told them what happened that night. They seemed very shocked after hearing it. During the time when the old man came to look for Grandma, she happened to be in the hospital undergoing emergency treatment. The woman's husband peeled off the fox's fur to make a scarf for her. After she put it on, strange things started happening one after another. 2 days later, she was found dead by her husband on their bed. Welcome to watch a horror short story. The story takes place in a small mountain village at the foot of the snowy mountains in northeastern in 1970. During that era, there were many hunters, mostly making a living by hunting. Li Xiongping was no exception. To support his family, he He would go hunting in the mountains with his son Richie from time to time. That morning, he left the house as usual. But not long after he had just gone up the mountain, Richie called out from up ahead. So Li Zhongping quickly went forward to check the situation. At this moment, a large brown fox was seen standing on the small hill. Li Zhongping acted without any hesitation. He raised his hand and fired a shot immediately. But the fox managed to dodge it with a swift leap and disappeared in the blink of an eye. This made Li Zhongping quite angry. Such a big fox must be worth a lot of money. He set a trap to catch the fox by following its footprints. He then went down the mountain and planned to come back in 2 days to check. After exercising with his wife, Hongmei, in the evening, he talked to her about this matter. Hongmei's eyes lit up after listening. She said she wanted a fox for scarf. Li Zhongping didn't promise verbally, but he made a mental note of it. A few days later, he and Richie went up the mountain to check the situation of the animal traps. They saw that the big fox had indeed been caught by the animal trap. Li Zhongping was overjoyed when he saw the fox trapped. The fox started to shed tears, seemingly wanting Li Zhongping to spare it. But when Li Zhongping remembered what his wife had said to him that night, he hardened his heart. He picked up a stick and beat the fox to death. Then he peeled off the fox's skin and made it into a scarf for his wife. So Hongmei showed off with the scarf around the village, thinking it would make the villagers envious. But unexpectedly, Tsuehua's face drastically changed upon seeing the scarf. The next second, she said there was something urgent at home and left. Shufan saw the expression on Tsuehua's face, said hello to Hongmei, and followed her. Later, Shufan caught up with Tsuehua and asked her why her expression suddenly changed. Tsuehua turned her head and nervously told Shufan the reason. She was envious when she first saw Hongmei's scarf just now. But the next second, the fox seemed to come alive, baring its teeth at her. After hearing Tsuehua's explanation, Shufan's pupils suddenly constricted in fear. Then she planned to tell the situation to Hongmei, but Tsuehua quickly stopped her. She said that Hongmei must have offended the fox fairy, and whoever interferes will suffer the consequences. The following events indeed unfolded, as Tsuehua had predicted. Hongmei was suddenly awakened by the sound of a fox while sleeping at night. She was scared and quickly woke up Li Zhongping, but Li Zhongping said he didn't hear anything at all. At this moment, a black shadow resembling a fox suddenly appeared outside the window. Hongmei was so scared that she quickly closed her eyes, but the next second, she felt a sinking sensation in her chest. When she opened her eyes, there was actually a big fox lying on her chest. So she sat up abruptly and threw the fox aside. It wasn't until she regained her senses that she realized it was just a fox fur scarf made by Li Zhongping. At lunch the next day, Hongmei told Li Zhongping about the situation the previous night, but Li Zhongping thought she had just dreamt it. He then took his hunting rifle and went up the mountain to hunt. When Li Zhongping returned home, it was already dark outside. He found that the lights in the house were not on. His wife would not normally have turned off the lights and gone to bed at that time. When Li Zhongping walked up and pushed open the door to the inner room, the scene before him felt like a heavy blow to his heart. His wife, Hongmei, unexpectedly died, and her death was extremely tragic. There were many bite marks from animals on her face and shoulders. Seeing his wife in such a miserable state, Li Zhongping's heart broke. He quickly called the police. After examining the scene, the police ruled out the possibility of murder. Li Zhongping believes that Hongmei was bitten to death by an animal. Since Hongmei died, the fox fur scarf disappeared. Hongmei's death was left unresolved. After the old man had surgery, his body was unexpectedly possessed by a dead spirit. The old man in the adjacent bed saw the situation and spoke about it the next day. As a result, he encountered sleep paralysis that night and died of respiratory failure. Welcome to watch the thrilling and horror short stories. The story takes place in 2018 at a local public hospital. Everyone knows hospitals. Every day, many births, aging, illnesses, and deaths occur. What I am going to talk about today is the story of a department in the hospital. That is the ICU, also known as the intensive care unit. The patients staying there are all critically ill. Almost every patient here has been at death's door. My friend, John DePeo, is in charge of this department. He told me about this when we were having dinner together. He said there was an elderly person who had just undergone a tumor removal surgery. Then he was pushed into the intensive care unit by the doctor. The operation went smoothly. Lee Dan also woke up very quickly, which was quite strange. After waking up, he didn't recognize his own children and even claimed to be someone else. He also mentioned the family situation and address of another person. The children were frightened by this, so they quickly told the doctor about it. The doctor said there was indeed such a person in the ICU, but that person had been dead for several days. He believed that Lee Dan was just talking nonsense after waking up. The doctor's explanation did not convince Lee Dan's children. They planned to observe for a few more days before making a decision. At night, Lee Dan also does not sleep. He keeps talking to the air, sometimes laughing and speaking as if there is really someone beside him. These symptoms have been going on for several days. The elderly man next to him, Shuai, heard some noises. So he turned his head and saw many people gathered around Lee Dan's bed. Those people had pale faces and unnaturally black pupils. They stood there motionless, which scared Shuai so much that he shivered all over, pretending to be asleep and didn't dare make a sound. They didn't leave until it was almost dawn. It seemed like they even took someone with them when they left. The next day, Lee Dan's children came to see him. Lee Dan returned to normal and could speak normally again. So Shuai told Lee Dan about what he saw last night. He said that he seemed to have been possessed by a deceased person, and he was only able to recover after those people took that person away. Who would have thought that just these few sentences would put Shuai's life in danger? That night, Lee Dan seemed to hear Shuai next to him struggling to breathe. He turned his head and saw a dark shadow crouching on top of Shuai. The shadow was pressing down on Shuai, making it difficult for him to breathe, and his breath grew weaker and weaker. Lee Dan wanted to call for help, but he couldn't make a sound, and he couldn't move either. Lee Dan didn't return to normal until the alarm of Shuai's vital sign monitor went off, but by then Shuai had stopped breathing. Lee Dan told his children about this. His children were scared and consulted the doctor about Lee Dan's condition again. The doctor said it's called ICU delirium. Moving him to a regular ward will be fine. A few days later, the doctor asked the children to transfer him to a regular ward. I didn't expect the old man to indeed be as the doctor described. No unusual incidents occurred again until Lee Dan recovered and was discharged from the hospital. The son went to the river to scoop up treasures in order to raise money for his father's leg treatment. He was unexpectedly entangled by a terrifying water ghost at the bottom of the river and drowned. When people rushed to help, they discovered more than a dozen bodies. Welcome to watch the collection of suspenseful and scary horror stories. In a remote small mountain village lives such a family. A family of 5, with 3 boys, all relied on the father to support them. But that year, the father accidentally broke his leg. So the farm work fell on the shoulders of the 2 brothers. The 2 brothers worked while they discussed earning money to treat their father's leg while trying many methods that all failed. Brother Tianpao suggested going to the river under the broken bridge to search for treasures. But as soon as Brother Tianpao finished speaking, younger brother Shanpao got scared because no one who went to search for treasures had ever come back alive. Tianpao was visibly angry and scolded his younger brother Shanpao for being timid and weak-willed. So he then went home to get a rope, planning to go by himself. His younger brother had no choice but to follow along reluctantly. The 2 brothers walked for nearly an hour before arriving at the edge of the broken bridge. The river flowing under the broken bridge had a strong current, and the water was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Tianpao, without saying a word, tied a rope around himself, grabbed a shovel, and went into the water. His brother stayed on the shore, holding the rope. Just as Shanpao feared, after Tianpao went into the water, he never surfaced again. Shanpao, worried about his brother's safety, began to pull the rope back with all his strength. He pulled the rope a few times, but it suddenly broke. So Shanpao casually threw the rope and then jumped into the water. The water in the river is especially clear, but he did not see his brother's figure. Just like that, Shanpao swam all the way to the riverbed. There were only some bricks and stone carvings at the riverbed. Just then, Shanpao suddenly sensed something behind him. He turned around and saw a humanoid monster covered in aquatic plants. Startled, he forgot about looking for his brother and quickly swam towards the surface of the water. He hadn't swum far before his legs were entangled by the aquatic plants on the monster's body. Then the monster opened its mouth, as if it wanted to eat him. Shanpao was so scared that he almost peed himself. He quickly used his hands to remove the water plants from his legs. But before he could do that, the monster bit towards him. So, he had to turn around and swim towards the water surface. Luckily, Shanpao is good at swimming. With a few strokes, he swam out of the water surface. He didn't linger on the water surface for too long. With a few dog paddles, he swam to the shore. Then he knelt on the shore and burst into tears. He knew that his brother was not coming back. His brother, who he depended on, had left him like this. Dad's leg also turned into a tumor because there was no money for treatment. So Shanpao became the backbone of the family. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years have passed. The leader of this village built a reservoir upstream of this river. The water level at the broken bridge is rapidly decreasing, and is now less than 1 meter deep. The scenery at the bottom of the water becomes clearly visible. When the villagers found out, they sent their younger generations to come and retrieve the treasures. Shanpao, who was already in his 20s at that time, followed along but did not enter the water. At this moment, a villager suddenly got entangled by water plants. Several villagers nearby quickly ran over to help upon seeing the situation. These water plants are really tricky, wrapping tightly around the villager in just a few moments. Shanpao, who happened to be standing on the shore, saw this scene. His face suddenly changed color, and his mouth opened wide. Or a villager used a small knife to cut the water plants. They only rescued the villager out in time, otherwise the villager might have suffocated to death. Those water plants died quickly without water, which is particularly strange. Younger brother Bianpao felt very curious when he saw this and proposed to get closer for a better look. But he found that at this moment, elder brother Shanpao was trembling all over and couldn't stop crying. Shanpao only realized now that the humanoid monster wrapped in seaweed back then was actually his older brother Tianpao seeking help from him. At this moment, the young men realized that the deceased villagers who were searching for treasures were probably killed by these seaweeds. So the villagers decided to uproot and eradicate all these seaweeds. When they were cutting with great enthusiasm, an accident happened. At this moment, a villager panicked and called others to come and have a look. Just then, behind the stones, in the river, there were many bodies wrapped in water plants. A brave villager cautiously used a sickle to cut open the water plants. Inside, they indeed found a skeleton with no flesh or skin left. And among them, one was Tianpao, who had drowned after being entangled in aquatic plants back then. So the two brothers knelt in front of the skeletal remains of their brother Tianpao, crying uncontrollably. The villagers found a total of more than a dozen skeletons, belonging to both adults, children, and livestock. Soon, the skeletons were all gathered and placed by the broken bridge by the villagers. When the county leader heard about this, they even specially invited an archaeological team. However, after the team's excavation, they did not find any treasures. That broken bridge still exists today, but it is the most painful memory of Shanpao's life. Have you heard of the Ghost carrying sedan chair. A group of strangely dressed ghosts carry you to a desolate graveyard, and when they reach the destination, they use their hands to dig up a grave to bury you. Welcome to continue watching horror and suspenseful short stories. The story takes place in 1993. Every new year, my mom would take me to visit my grandma. That year happened to be the anniversary of my grandfather's passing. So my grandma told me about a strange event that she and my grandfather had encountered. When my grandma was young, she was even more beautiful than Taylor Swift and had countless suitors wanting to marry her. But she felt that men only lusted after her body. She is nearly 30 and still a virgin. Due to her age, there are fewer suitors coming forward to propose. So, her father had to call a matchmaker to help arrange blind dates. After understanding the situation, the matchmaker didn't say a word and directly asked the old lady to go to the neighboring village to Li Zhongping's house. As expected, the situation unfolded just as the matchmaker had anticipated. The old lady was immediately attracted by Li Zhongping's good looks upon meeting him. After that, Li Zhongping often rides his own mule to go on dates with the old lady. People were very conservative back then. If it were now, they would have started dating long ago. Therefore, their dates just involved chatting and then rushing home before dark. Once again, Li Zhongping came to see Grandma and went to the small grove to have a heart-to-heart talk. Grandpa went out of his way to please Grandma and specially gave her a golden hairpin. Grandma was so surprised to see it, as gold was not common in those days. When she held it in her hand, it must have weighed at least 2 taels. This was a huge gain for her. After returning home, Grandma quickly put away the gold hairpin. She even asked someone to tell Li Zhongping that he is welcome to come and marry her tomorrow directly. Upon learning this, Li Zhongping was overjoyed. Early the next morning, he arrived with a sedan chair to pick up the bride. Granny even specially brought along the box containing the golden hairpin. Perhaps due to the overly ostentatious procession, they unexpectedly encountered bandits on the way to the groom's home. So Granny quickly put the box into the hidden compartment under the sedan chair seat. Then she carefully drew the curtain aside to check the situation outside. The people carrying the sedan chair had already fought with the bandits. These sedan carriers are really brave. Not only did they not run away, but they also beat the bandits out of breath. Grandma finally felt relieved when she saw the situation and let out a sigh of relief. Surprisingly, the sedan chair was lifted up by someone the next second. Grandma felt something was off, so she spoke up to ask about it. But no one responded to her, only the sound of Swana answered her. Grandma, despite being outspoken, is not foolish. Isn't this a funeral tune? She got up and pulled back the curtain, wanting to see which unlucky thing had happened. The bearers carrying the sedan chair were not the same ones as before. What's even more frightening is that this group of people carrying the sedan chair out didn't even bring their shoes. At that moment, the person carrying the sedan suddenly turned around and smiled at Grandma. Grandma finally realized that the person carrying the sedan was actually a dead person. The people who helped carry the sedan earlier had already disappeared. Grandma, upon seeing this, opened the curtain and jumped down from the sedan. However, she accidentally hit a stone by the roadside, causing blood to gush out instantly. Due to the critical situation at hand, she could only endure the pain and crawl into the bushes. Just at that moment, she suddenly remembered that the golden hairpin was still in the hidden compartment of the sedan chair. But she didn't dare to board the sedan chair to retrieve it. Instead, she pushed aside the bushes and observed the situation of the sedan chair. The sedan chair carrier's clothing is not from our era. Grandma followed them for a long time before they finally put down the sedan chair. And their destination turned out to be a terrifying and eerie graveyard. After putting down the sedan chair, these ghosts found a grave and started digging with their hands. After about 10 minutes, they dug out a pitch-black coffin, and what was even more surprising was that they placed Grandma's golden hairpin inside the coffin. Then, they started to leave and bury the coffin back into the ground. After the grave was rebuilt, those ghosts suddenly disappeared. Grandma wanted to retrieve the golden hairpin, but she was afraid that the ghosts might suddenly reappear. So she decided to go home first and tell her family about this matter. But when Grandma got home and was ready to go with Li Zhongping to find Jean Faxi, suddenly, an old man came to the house and said that the golden hairpin was actually passed down from his ancestors. A few years ago, he found out that their family's ancestral grave had been dug up by someone. The golden hairpin was probably dug up and stolen by tomb raiders. He told Grandma not to go look for the golden hairpin anymore. The hairpin has negative energy and will only bring disaster to them. So the passionate couple decided to just go into the bridal chamber that night. This man eats only various animal reproductive organs for 3 meals a day. By chance and coincidence, he even ended up eating the manhood. As a result, he became addicted after the first taste and consumed 2,000 in 6 months. Welcome to Watch the File of Bizarre Cases. The story took place in 2002, inside the first prison of a certain city. Hu Bufan is discussing the prison reform when they received a report from the public. He found a corpse in his own cornfield, so they put aside what they were doing. They followed the police officers to the scene of the crime together. Upon seeing the police arrive, the crowd immediately pointed to the cornfield on the side. Leader Chen then quickly stepped forward, using both hands to part the cornstalks. So they saw a middle-aged man in black clothes curled up there. The man's face was dark, and he appeared to have been dead for quite some time. The accompanying forensic doctor immediately stepped forward to examine the body. Surprisingly, after the forensic examination, it was found that the person was not dead. Leader Chen and the police officer beside him were startled by this news. They immediately drove the man to the hospital. After receiving treatment at the hospital, the man soon regained consciousness. Leader Chen immediately interrogated the man in detail. The man first felt a wave of fear, then went on to describe what had happened. It turns out that the man is a tomb raider. That day, he was scouting in the mountains. 2 farmers digging in the ground caught his attention. He found the soil on the farmer's hose was white kaolinite clay specifically used for burying ancient tombs. So he noted the location and came to dig at midnight as planned. As expected, the hole went through, revealing a real ancient tomb. But what disappointed him was that the tomb was unexpectedly small and bare. Just then, he noticed a large red altar placed right in the center of the tomb. The altar was covered in talismans, as if suppressing something. Without saying a word, he walked up and forcefully opened the lid with a sudden motion. Although he had seen many frightening scenes before, the sight in front of him still made him tremble inside. Inside was actually the corpse of a fat, bald man. The man's mouth was wide open, his body arched back and faced towards the sky. Black aura began to emerge from the fat, bald man's mouth, causing the man watching to suddenly shrink his pupils and furrow his brow. When he snapped out of his daze, he picked up the cover and slammed it shut. Then he turned and ran. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. As he was about to exit, he glanced back and saw the black mist in the altar had already taken on a human form and crawled out from the altar. Terrified, he immediately scrambled into a thief hole and desperately climbed towards the outside. When he was about to climb out of the hole, he could clearly feel the dark figure climbing up as well. Just as he crawled out of the hole, he took out a stick of dynamite from his bag, lit it with a lighter, and he directly threw it down towards the hole. When the dynamite approached the dark figure, there was a loud explosion. The power of this dynamite was truly impressive. He only used 1 stick of dynamite to blow up the den of thieves. He quickly left the scene, but suddenly blacked out and fainted. Leader Chen could not determine the veracity of the man's words after hearing them. As a result, he made a phone call and brought a seasoned tomb raider from the first prison. After understanding the situation, the tomb raider told Leader Chen the truth. It turned out that during the Qing dynasty, a very abnormal event occurred. The local magistrate had a special hobby. That is, he liked to eat various animal genitalia. One day, by a stroke of luck, he wanted to taste the manhood of a death row convict. So before the execution, he ordered the chef to cut off the death row convict's cock. The chef cooked it into a pot of fragrant manhood soup. I didn't expect that pervert couldn't control himself as soon as he ate this manhood soup. It was just incredibly delicious. It is said that during his term in office, he ate a total of more than 1,000 pieces of manhood. He knew full well that he would definitely go to hell after death, so he had someone seal him inside a large red jar. Leader Chen subconsciously touched his own weapon after hearing the tomb robber story. He then followed the tomb robber's provided address, called a crane to hoist the urn out, and burned it. Have you heard that corpse oil can actually extend one's lifespan? A man used evil arts to extract corpse oil from the body. Then he inhaled the smoke generated by burning it through his nose. Unexpectedly, he encountered an accident and died in the basement. Welcome to Watch Bizarre Case Files. The story takes place in 2007. The protagonist of the story is driving a truck with his wife to visit her family. But when they passed by a villa in the suburbs, an accident happened. Newmanhwa's body suddenly stiffened, his eyes rolled back, and the next moment he revealed a sinister smile. Then, he turned the steering wheel and headed towards the villa, which frightened his wife, Ruhua, who was on the side, causing her to scream loudly. Soon, with a bang, the gate of the villa was knocked open by the truck. Ruhua couldn't understand why her husband would do this. Whenever her husband wanted it, she never refused. But there was no time for her to think any further. The truck suddenly crashed into the villa's garage, making a loud bang. The quality of the villa is also very good, actually managing to stop the truck. At this moment, Newmanhwa gradually regained consciousness. His wife began to scold him upon seeing the situation, but he had no impression at all of what had just happened. When they got off the car to check the situation, he panicked and called the police with a frightened face. The police quickly arrived, but when Captain Zhao finished reviewing the scene, he didn't say a word and immediately called Leader Chen with his phone, because this was no longer something he could handle on his own. After answering the call, Leader Chen immediately instructed Hu Bufan to drive to the scene. There was actually a Eerie corpse inside the hole that the truck had crashed into. Leader Chen opened his eyes when he saw the scene, knowing that this was another bizarre case. The body had begun to decompose, with one hand leaving bloody marks on the ground. So they immediately started searching in the basement. When they passed by a room's doorway, they were stunned by the scene inside. They saw a body hanging upside down in the room. The body was completely green. The body was covered with dense lumps. There was also a bowl placed beneath the body. All the dripping fat from the body has collected in this bowl. Upon seeing this, Leader Chen told them that this is a form of evil arts using corpse oil to extend life. The person who used this evil arts is the one who died at the entrance of the underground dungeon. It turned out that half a month ago, the owner of the villa, Achong, felt that his life was almost over. So he killed a butler who had been with him for more than 10 years. He extracted corpse oil from the butler's corpse. He poured it into the oil lamp. Then he lit the oil lamp with a lighter. He sniffed the smoke generated when the corpse oil burned. But what he overlooked is that he did not maintain the corpse. This led to the corpse becoming dry and dehydrated, with a bloodstain appearing on its forehead. So when he tried to extend his life, the corpse's vengeful spirit emerged from that bloodstain. When Achong saw this strand of vengeful spirit, he was scared to the point of almost ascending on the spot. He didn't even say hello and turned his head to flee outside the basement. The intense fear made his legs weak, and he fell to the ground as soon as he couldn't stand steady. At this moment, he turned his head and saw the unjust soul drifting towards him. The unjust soul wanted Achong to taste this as well, so he grabbed his foot and dragged Achong towards the inside. Achong was so frightened that his hands left bloodstains on the ground, due to the immense shock and Achong's weak heart. so he was scared to death on the basement floor. He had intended to extend his own life. Didn't expect to depart even faster. After the forensic examination, those lumps on the butler's body, those were all stabbed by Ah-chang with a knife. The purpose was to allow the grease from the corpse to flow smoothly into the bowl. So Leader Chin even specially invited a monk to perform a Buddhist ritual to help with the spirit's passage. But they were opposed by Ah-chang's family, and ended up selling the mansion at a low price. The man actually used a razor blade to cut off his own cock. Then he put on heavy makeup, wore a bright red dress, and hanged himself. And the purpose of doing this was simply to become a ghost and seek revenge. Welcome to Watch the Chronicles of Mysteries. The story takes place in 1996. One day, the County Public Security Bureau received a report that a corpse was found in the village well. The police immediately drove to the scene. Captain Liu, after looking at the situation on the scene, was completely dumbfounded and took off his mask, looking puzzled at Leader Chin. At this time, the detective Old Chin and Hu Bufan also came over together. Seeing this, he asked Hu Bufan to bring the corpse up first. Although Hu Bufan's brain doesn't work well, his courage is surprisingly huge. He grabbed the water pump shaft with both hands and started stirring it upwards. After a while, a male corpse wearing a red robe emerged from the well. Upon completely pulling the corpse out of the well, they discovered that the male corpse was actually wearing a dress. Hu Bufan was not afraid. He grabbed the corpse's armpits with both hands and pulled him up. The fresh blood was still flowing down the man's legs. After the corpse was lifted out, it was laid flat on a 2-meter-long diaper. It was only then that they discovered the male corpse was actually wearing heavy makeup. The forensic doctor immediately stepped forward to conduct a preliminary inspection of the corpse. At this moment, Hu Bufan walked up to the well and lowered his head to look inside. It was just this glance that almost scared the usually brave Hu Bufan into wetting himself. There was actually a face in the well staring right back at him. Leader Chin quickly held onto Hu Bufan, who was about to fall. He then walked up, bent down to take a look at the situation at the bottom of the well, and then told Hu Bufan that there was a mirror installed at the bottom of the well. By this time, the forensic examiner had finished the inspection and informed Leader Chin of the situation. The deceased is likely to have died by hanging. There were no signs of being beaten on the body, and the bloodstains on his body were caused by cutting off his own cock. The forensic examination results, when spoken out, are hard to believe even for the forensic pathologist himself, let alone others. Several people believe that these bizarre behaviors must be connected in some way. Suddenly, he thought of a kind of evil arts, which is the ritual to castrate and transform into a ghost. Could it be that the deceased intended to use these arts to transform into a fierce ghost and harm people? At this time, the old village chief beside him stepped forward and said he knew the deceased. Leader Chin, seeing this, instructed the old village chief to quickly take him to the deceased's home. A few minutes later, the village chief led them to the deceased's home. And at this time, Leader Chin was so anxious that he didn't even bother to knock on the door. He directly told Hu Bufan to break open the door. When they saw the situation inside the room, they were dumbfounded on the spot. Just saw a female corpse lying in the room, looking like she had been dead for a long time. Leader Chin immediately had the accompanying forensic doctor examine the corpse. The forensic doctor's words puzzled Leader Chin a bit, as the female corpse also appeared to be a suicide. At this time, the old village chief revealed the truth to them. The woman was the wife of the male corpse found in the well. Last night, villagers heard them arguing with a man threatening to kill his wife. Leader Chin finally understood why the man used these evil arts. He then asked the old village chief if the man had any enemies in the village. The old village chief sighed at the situation, and then mentioned a scandal involving this couple. It turned out that the man used to work at a factory in another town screwing screws, and his wife felt that she couldn't feel anything with his middle finger. So, she got involved with a single man in the village. As soon as the old village chief finished speaking, Leader Chen was so shocked that his two balls collided with each other. Then he immediately asked the old village chief to take him to Guangbin's house. If they were any later, Guangbin might be in big trouble. They ran all the way to Guangbin's house. Hu Bufan found that Guangbin's door was slightly ajar. After pushing the door open, Leader Chen realized that he was late again. By that time, Guangbin had already passed away. He lay on his own Kong with his mouth wide open. At a glance, old Chen could tell that the old bachelor had been scared to death, with his bladder exploded. Since all the participants in this case had passed away, Leader Chen announced the disbandment and returned to the police station. On the way back, Hu Bufan asked Leader Chen if the male corpse would harm people again. Old Chen replied that the man died holding a grudge. Once he killed his enemy, the grudge would disappear. A vengeful ghost will disperse once it has no resentment, so it will no longer harm people. This person brought a monster disguised as a human back home. He also forcibly engaged in some unspeakable acts with it. Realizing the truth, he was so scared that he quickly sought help from a Taoist to catch the demon. Welcome to watch strange tales from a Chinese studio. The story takes place in the early Ming dynasty in Taiyuan, where there was a young nobleman named newmanhwa. That day, while he was out walking his birds, he noticed an elegant woman ahead of him. So newmanhwa quickly caught up and tried to flirt with the woman. He saw that the woman was quite attractive, so he asked her where she was heading. The woman, seeing his concerned expression, said with a troubled look that she had nowhere to go. This made newmanhwa very happy. He immediately snatched the woman's burden away. He then brought the woman to his mansion. He took the woman to a room in the backyard. Then he took off the woman's clothes and kissed her with a pout. To maintain such a relationship, newmanhwa often buys gifts for the woman. On that day, newmanhwa ran into a Taoist while he was out shopping. As they were about to pass each other, the Taoist reached out and called out to newmanhwa. The Taoist said that newmanhwa's blackened forehead might have attracted some evil spirits. The words of the Taoist really angered newmanhwa. After cursing at the Taoist for a few moments, he turned around and left, while the Taoist, seeing this, didn't say anything more. Back at home, newmanhwa's wife noticed his expression and asked him about the reason. So newmanhwa told his wife about the matter of sheltering the woman and what the Taoist had said to him. Upon hearing this, his wife felt that the words of the Taoist could not be ignored, and the origin of the woman did seem somewhat suspicious. Upon hearing his wife's words, newmanhwa also felt that there might be some issues with the woman. So he quietly made his way to the woman's residence and tiptoed towards the window. He poked a hole in the window with his hand and peeked inside. As a result, when he looked inside, he got so scared that his two eggs bumped into each other. It turns out that the woman was just a piece of human skin, and her real body turned out to be a chamois green monster. What is the green monster currently painting with a brush? Taking another look at the table, it turns out that he is painting lipstick on a piece of human skin. At this moment, the green monster seemed to sense something and suddenly turned its head to look out the window. newmanhwa was so scared that he shrank back, covering his mouth with both hands, too frightened to move. After finishing drawing the chamois green monster, he put on the human skin on himself, and in a few seconds, he turned into the beautiful woman from before. newmanhwa was so scared that he ran out from the backyard in a panic. He came to the street to inquire around, looking for the Taoist he had met before. Finally, he found the Taoist in a small alley. He immediately kneeled upon seeing Taoist newmanhwa, begging the Taoist to subdue the green monster and save his life. In order to punish him, the Taoist handed over his own floating dust to newmanhwa and asked him to endure it for 2 days. newmanhwa, thinking about his previous attitude towards the Taoist, didn't dare to overstep his boundaries further, so he returned home. He hung the Taoist's talismans on the beams and hid with his wife in the room. In the evening, Green Monster suddenly shouted his name outside the door. newmanhwa was so scared that he sat up straight when he heard it. His face looked very panicked. Green Monster wanted to push the door open when he saw that newmanhwa still hadn't opened it, but just as he reached out his hand, Fu Qin immediately emitted a golden light that bounced Green Monster far away, burning its skin in the process. This made Green Monster very angry, and it directly tore off the human skin. Then Green Monster took it and covered it on the floating dust, so the floating dust directly lost its effect. Then Green Monster, with anger, slapped the door into pieces. Upon seeing Green Monster barge in, newmanhwa immediately raised his fist and swore never to dare again. But Green Monster was furious at this point. He lunged forward and with one move pierced through newmanhwa's chest. Green Monster took out newmanhwa's heart and then turned around and left triumphantly. After the frightened wife regained consciousness, she saw the deceased newmanhwa and burst into tears. Nyozi, newmanhwa's younger brother, rushed over upon hearing the sound and saw the tragic sight of his brother. He hurried to the temple where the Taoist was located and brought him to his home. Upon seeing newmanhwa's wife, she knelt down and begged him to save newmanhwa. The Taoist told her not to worry and asked her to let him deal with the Green Monster first. Later, the Taoist arrived in the courtyard as if sensing something. He leaped up and landed on top of the 2.8-meter wall. Then he arrived in front of a room and kicked open the door with one kick. He also swung his sword directly and stabbed towards the old lady in the room. The old lady dodged to the side, and her eye was pierced through the skin. Just as soon as they came face to face, the Green Monster was almost killed. So the old lady ran towards the outside of the house. The Taoist, seeing this, flew forward and pierced through the old lady's chest. It turned out that the Green Monster had taken the old lady's skin again. It had just popped out and hadn't stabilized yet when the Taoist swung his sword towards it. The Green Monster, unable to dodge in time, was killed by the Taoist with one strike of the sword. After killing the Green Monster, the Taoist told newmanhwa's wife that the old beggar on the mountain might be able to save her husband's life. newmanhwa's wife tearfully searched the streets everywhere. Finally, she found the old beggar by the outhouse. She knelt in front of the old beggar. Then she told the old beggar about what had happened with her husband these past few days. The old beggar listened and then tapped his nostrils, saying, "Newmanhwa has only gotten what he deserves for being so lustful." newmanhwa's wife, seeing the situation, kowtowed to the old beggar while saying kind words. But before she could kowtow a few times, the old beggar grabbed her and made a strange sound with his mouth. Then he spat heavily on her hand with a paw sound. The old beggar told newmanhwa's wife to swallow the thick phlegm, and he would be willing to save her husband. Although it was a bit disgusting, in order to save her husband, the wife gritted her teeth and swallowed the phlegm. But when she finished swallowing, the old beggar stood up, laughed heartily, and ran away. So newmanhwa's wife could only cry as she returned home. When she got home, she wiped the blood stains from newmanhwa's chest. Just then, she suddenly felt nauseous. With a retching sound, she spat the thick phlegm she had swallowed earlier onto newmanhwa's chest. newmanhwa's wife was scared and was about to wipe off the thick phlegm. She found that the thick phlegm had transformed into a heart. newmanhwa quickly woke up after getting a heart. The wound also miraculously healed. newmanhwa's wife hugged him with tears of joy, while Taoist, seeing this, quietly turned around and left. From then on, newmanhwa seemed like a changed person. He spent his days at home studying and eventually even passed the imperial examination to obtain an official position. This man spent his entire fortune on giving gifts to the female live streamer. But when he called to ask the female streamer for help, he was tragically rejected and blocked. So he found the female streamer, and they became partners in crime. Welcome to Watch Mystery Case Files. In recent years, with the rise of short videos, a profession has become popular. That is live streaming. Everyone wants to become famous overnight through it. This also makes countless people addicted to it every day. newmanhwa is one of them. One time, he came across a female streamer named Ruhwa, and he was completely captivated. As long as Ruhwa goes live, Newanime will try his best to send tips. In this way, he occupied the top spot on the list and also caught the attention of Ruhwa. Every time Newanime sends gifts, Ruhwa will thank him by saying Newanime's name. Under Ruhwa's gentle flattery, Newanime gradually became intoxicated. Newanime is not someone wealthy, but an ordinary truck driver. He earns around 10,000 renminbi each month, out of which he needs to repay the mortgage and support 2 children. As he becomes more obsessed with Ruhwa, Newanime gradually drifts apart from his family. No matter when or where, he always holds a phone, endlessly scrolling through it. When Ruhwa is live streaming, he will watch it and give tips. When he is not live streaming, he will repeatedly watch the short videos posted by Ruhwa. He used all the savings at home to reward, and even borrowed from online loans. After the wife found out about this situation, she asked Newanime to hand over all the money. But Newanime not only ignored his wife, he also went to spend the night on the truck. After his wife couldn't bear it anymore, she left with the 2 children. But Newanime showed no remorse. Instead, he felt even more free. He became even more relentless in sending gifts in the live stream room than before. He robs Peter to pay Paul, borrowing money to pay off existing debts, and receives debt collection calls every day. With no other choice, he could only sell his own truck. And he spent all the money from selling the truck on that female live streamer. In the end, he ran out of money, even his meal expenses were gone. So, he decided to ask Ruhwa for help. But when he called Ruhwa for help, Ruhwa completely ignored him. In the end, Ruhwa simply hung up on Newanime's call, and even blocked Newanime on WeChat, cutting off all contact with him. At that moment, all the beautiful dreams turned into bubbles. Newanime dropped his phone in an instant, and he completely lost his composure. Spending hundreds of thousands on the female anchor, yet not receiving a hint of genuine affection in return. He saw no hope at all, so he thought of committing suicide. But he was unwilling to be deceived like this, so he tried every possible way to find out Ruhwa's address. And he successfully found her. But when Ruhwa saw Newanimo's poor appearance, she pretended not to recognize him. Newanime at this moment completely broke down. He raised the knife towards the female anchor. He then crazily stabbed the female anchor more than 10 times, and died on the spot. After killing Ruhwa, Newanime ended his own life with tears streaming down his face. 2 people with sinister intentions ended up becoming a pair of ill-fated lovers. Have you heard of the shocking incident in China called the Boy in Red? The deceased was wearing a swimsuit and a red dress, hanging from the ceiling beam. Both feet were tied up, and a big weight was attached. Welcome to watch the documentary of the mystery case. The story takes place in 1996, in the office building of the Public Security Bureau. Hu Bufan is reviewing the case files that were previously handled. Special Group 9 has handled many cases over the years, one of which caused a big sensation in China. That's the Boy in Red. Today, Hu Bufan will study this case. The victim of this case is named Kwang Jijun, and he was only 13 years old. Her home is located in Shuangqing Village, Dongguan Town, Banan District, Chongqing City. That day, the couple Kwang Jilu returned to the village to give their son, Kwang Jijun, his living expenses. When the couple arrived home, they found their courtyard gate locked, which seemed strange to them. Their introverted son rarely went out. So Kwang Jilu went to the back door and found it slightly ajar. The couple pushed open the back door and entered the house, but they did not see their son inside. Sensing something was amiss, Kwang Jilu pushed open the door to the inner room. But the scene before them shattered the hearts of the couple into pieces. Just then, they saw their son Kwang Jijun had already hung himself on the beam in the inner room. The son's hands were tightly bound with hemp rope. The son was dressed in a long red dress for women. There was also a heavy iron weight hanging from his feet. Kwang Jilu loudly called out his son's name upon seeing the situation, while his wife fainted directly. After his wife woke up, the sounds of her sorrowful cries spread throughout the entire village. The villagers quickly reported to the police after knowing about it, and the police arrived soon afterwards. The police officers first took photos of the scene for evidence collection. Then, they conducted a detailed questioning of the couple, Kwang Jilu. During this time, Kwang Jijun's mother said something that shocked the police. Kwang Jijun's mother said she rushed back to visit her son because she had a nightmare. Just the night before, she dreamed of a dark shadow hovering outside her house. When the shadow left, it turned back and smiled at her. The frightened police officer asked with wide-open mouth. Leader Chen rushed to the scene immediately upon receiving the information. Leader Chen discovered that Kwang Jijun had a needle mark on his forehead that resembled the soul-separating needle from Maoshan Taoist arts. From this, he deduced that the weight on the child's feet should be the soul-settling weight. What made it even more bizarre is that Kwang Jijun was also wearing a tight-fitting swimsuit inside. The ropes on the hands and feet were tied very professionally, and not easy to untie. All of this must definitely have some sort of meaning. It's definitely not a coincidence. When Hu Bufan was completely absorbed in reading, a hand suddenly pressed down on his shoulder from behind. This sudden move almost scared Hu Bufan to pee his pants. He turned his head to look. It turned out to be the leader of Special Group 9, who is also his mentor, Leader Chen. Leader Chen glanced at the information in Hu Bufan's hand and asked him to take a look at some other cases. He said that even he couldn't find the culprit at that time, only knowing that it was a soul-capturing life extension technique. This case will definitely be brought to light, and the killer will certainly be brought to justice. This person's bald head was actually licked by someone as if it were a lollipop. Even more exaggeratedly, there was a deep bloodstain left where it had been licked. Later, he pressed the landlord for information and learned that someone had actually died in that house. Welcome to Watch Hidden Mysteries. The story takes place in 2012. My name is Sean Powell, and I am a junior programmer just starting out. Whenever I encounter problems I don't know how to solve, I always turn to my colleague newmanhwa for help. For a period of time, newmanhwa deliberately kept a distance from me. And there was also a scar on his face. I asked him about it when I saw it, but he just walked away without looking back. It wasn't until later that I understood the origin of this scar on him. Because newmanhwa couldn't stand the foot odor in the employee dormitory, he rented a room outside by himself. In order to save money, he found a low-cost shared rental room. What he didn't expect was that his flatmate in the shared rental turned out to be a bald big brother. This bald guy named Tian Bang's job every day is collecting debts for people. newmanhwa originally wanted to move out, but in this way, the deposit cannot be refunded. Soon after he moved in, strange things started happening. One night, he drank with friends until late before returning home. Because he had a bit too much to drink, he planned to sleep on the sofa that night. Just as he was sleeping soundly, he was suddenly licked on the face by someone with their tongue. The tingling sensation felt so real. He jumped off the sofa suddenly. newmanhwa looked around the living room, but didn't see anyone. Suddenly, a sharp pain came across his face. So he ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror, only to discover a bloody scratch where he had been licked. After this incident, newmanhwa rarely stayed in the living room. That day when he returned home, he found Tian Bang watching TV in the living room. So he told Tian Bang about what he had encountered before. But Tian Bang didn't take it seriously at all. He even turned around and mocked newmanhwa for being timid. newmanhwa saw this and didn't say much more. He went back to his own bedroom. But when newmanhwa was getting ready to wash up and go to bed, strange things began to happen. He had just passed by the living room when the light suddenly went out. He instinctively turned to look at Tian Bang on the sofa, only to see a fat man behind Tian Bang actually supporting his shoulders. Even more exaggeratedly, that fat man actually bent down and licked Tian Bang's bald head with his tongue. And at this moment, Tian Bang, for some reason, stood there dumbfounded without any reaction. The fat man just licked it once, and there was such a large bloodstain on Tian Bang's bald head. The fat man then bent down and started with a second and third lick. At this point, Tian Bang's head had already begun to bubble with blood. He clenched his teeth in pain, and his body trembled uncontrollably. When he saw this, Newanime held a wash basin as if he had made a decision. He ran over aggressively and went straight for Tian Bang's bald head. This bowl of strength hit Tian Bang hard and knocked him onto the coffee table. After finishing these tasks, he ran back and hid in the corner to sneak a peek. At this point, the fat man is nowhere to be seen, and Tian Bang has regained his ability to move. He lifted his head and looked at Newanime in the corner with a scared expression on his face. Then he stood up and ran over to Newanime. Then he hugged Newanime and cried grievously. It turned out that when he was licked by Tian Bang earlier, he was conscious but unable to move. The thick guy's licking was damn painful. The tingling sensation almost made him collapse. Afterwards, Tian Bang and Newanime found the landlord. The landlord, upon seeing the bloodstains on Tian Bang's head, then told him something. The previous tenant of that house was a fat woman. The fat woman stayed in the room all day long trading stocks and often indulged in excessive eating and drinking. These lifestyle habits also led to her needing to take medication frequently. One evening, the fat woman suddenly fell ill and passed away on the sofa. Here, Tian Bang grabbed the landlord's collar and was about to hit him. The landlord, seeing the situation, had to compensate Tian Bang with 200,000 before the matter was settled. However, when Tian Bang took the money to the hospital for treatment, the doctor told him that he could only have a pig skin transplant. So he gave up on the treatment, but little did he know that it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. With this scar, hardly any boss dares to defy him when collecting debts. The girl's mother has been dead for almost a week. The girl, however, claims that during this period her mother cooked for her every day. What strange and bizarre things happened here in the end? Welcome to Watch the Record of Bizarre Cases. The story takes place in 1992. It was an incident that happened in Hong Kong in the past. There was a place called Kowloon Walled City back then, where some people from the lower strata of society lived. The living environment at that time was particularly poor. The slum emitted a foul stench all year round. But after living there for a long time, everyone got used to it. But one day, a foul smell started wafting from the fourth floor of the building. The foul smell continued for about a week. And not only did the smell not disperse, it also spread farther and farther. Two creepy Joes smelling the smell found the source of the smell. It's the room in front of you. Inside lies a woman and her two daughters. One of them, Creepy Joe, has not seen the woman and her two daughters for a long time, so the two of them discussed it and decided to call the police. The police quickly arrived, and Creepy Joe was leading the way in front of them. Before the police officers reached the room, they were also overwhelmed by the foul smell. One of the police officers, seeing this, reached out and knocked on the door. As a result, the room door was not closed but slightly ajar. When the door was pushed open, one of the police officers immediately vomited from the foul smell. Another police officer immediately drew his pistol. He suspected that there might be a dead body inside the house. However, when he entered the house, he found that there were actually two little girls inside. The officer asked if their parents were at home. The girl who was doing her homework said, "Mom is resting now." So the police officer asked the little girl to call her mother out to deal with the bad smell in the house. A girl said that her mother was tired from cooking and didn't want to disturb her. At this time, they finally smelled the foul odor mixed with the scent of rice. On the table was a bowl of just cooked bacon fried rice. The police officer planned to enter the house and explained the situation of the neighbor's complaint to the girl's mother when he saw the scene. He pushed open the bedroom door and found indeed a woman lying on the bed. The police officer stood at the doorway and explained his purpose to her. But when he finished speaking, the woman on the bed did not react at all. The police officer took a few steps forward and quietly greeted the woman. But soon, he found something was not quite right. There was dirty water on the slippers on the floor, and the bed also had a foul smell that seemed to be coming from here. The officer called out a few more times, but still received no response. So he endured the disgust and reached out to pat the woman's shoulder. But this scene almost scared him out of his skin. The woman had actually been dead for some time, her body swollen and beginning to decay. So the police quickly called for backup. After the forensic examination, the time of death of the woman exceeded 1 week, and the few little girls had been staying with the corpse for a week. And they even said that their mother did not die. She still gets up every day to cook for them. Looking at the traces in the kitchen, the police don't know how to explain all of this. Because those 2 little girls can't make such authentic cured meat rice at all. Have you heard of the shocking Wuxi murder case in Hualien, Taiwan? The victim's head was wrapped in black cloth and thrown into their own bathroom. After the police investigation failed to yield results, they unexpectedly turned to spiritual guidance for solving the case. Welcome to watch the record of this mysterious case. The story took place in 2006 in a high-end residential area in Hualien, Taiwan province. One morning, Tu Pao was getting ready to buy breakfast at the bun shop down the street. Suddenly, he smelled a strong foul odor in the air, and he turned to look. He saw a lot of flies gathered at the front door of his neighbor Lu Zhichin's house, and the stench was also coming from inside. Sensing something was amiss, Tu Pao quickly called the police. After receiving the report, the police arrived at the scene promptly. Without saying a word, the police at the scene immediately took forced entry measures. The putrid smell inside the house became even stronger. The police followed the foul smell and arrived at the door of the bathroom on the 2nd floor. When they opened the bathroom door, they were directly scared silly by the scene inside. There were actually 5 corpses in the bathroom, and they were highly decomposed and stuck together. The heads of the bodies were tied with black cloth and wire. Beneath the bodies, there were countless maggots and flies crawling around. A few police officers almost vomited upon seeing this scene. After forensic examination, it was determined that the deceased were 3 males and 2 females, with the oldest being 18 years old and the youngest only 8 years old. With the identification by Tu Pao, it was revealed that the 5 deceased individuals were the 5 children of the Lu family. The missing couple Lu Zhichin have become the prime suspects in this case. After 2 months of visiting and investigation, the police have not been able to trace the whereabouts of the couple Lu Zhichin. When Police Chief Newmanhwa was at a loss over this case, a young woman in her early 20s in a red dress took the initiative to come forward. She said she could solve this pentagram murder case, but would need a reward of 10 million new Taiwan dollars. As soon as the girl finished speaking, the assistant police officer beside her couldn't help but laugh. Newmanhwa sternly warned the girl that such jokes were not allowed in the police station. What surprised Newmanhwa was that the girl claimed she could communicate with spirits. She can summon the spirits of the dead to converse with him, and thereby uncover the truth of the case. Although there is a belief in communicating with spirits in Taiwan, the local police do not acknowledge this. But originally, Newmanhwa, who looked down on the girl, he unexpectedly agreed to her conditions. Newmanhwa gathered all the police officers who had previously been in charge of the case of the 5 sons' murder, and then drove several police cars to the scene of the crime that night. After arriving at the scene, Newmanhwa, at the request of the girl, left 4 police officers including himself in the room. The girl then placed 6 soul-summoning rattles in the room, sat in the middle, lit 3 incense sticks, and waited until midnight before starting to cast spells and chant incantations. Then she touched her forehead with her index finger and shouted loudly. a soul-like leg came out of the bathroom. Several police officers recognized that this was the youngest boy among the 5 victims. The boy confessed to the girl that both he and his siblings were killed by their parents. Later, the parents also committed suicide. Their corpses were found in the forest behind the church. The little boy finished speaking and then walked into the bathroom without looking back. Newmanhwa and the others couldn't see what had just happened at all. Then the young girl turned around and told Newmanhwa about the situation. After that, Newmanhwa led people to search in the woodland behind the church, and sure enough, they found it under a big tree. They found the bodies of a man and a woman. After examination by the forensic pathologist, they were confirmed to be the missing couple Lu Zhiqin and his wife. That's how the case of the 5 murders was successfully solved. However, the details of summoning spirits were not disclosed to the public by the police. Have you heard of the shocking Jianshe incident in Sichuan, China? An archaeological team unearthed an ancient Qing dynasty corpse with no signs of decay. The body was tied up with 9 ropes and had a talisman attached to its head. When touched by a living person, it suddenly sat up and bit someone after just a few seconds. Welcome to watch the documentary on supernatural cases. The story took place in 2005 in Jijiagu Village, Nancheng City, Sichuan Province, China. An archaeological activity is currently taking place on the western slope of the village. Archaeologists have discovered a coffin in this Qing dynasty tomb. Inside the coffin was an ancient corpse bound with ropes, and strangely, the corpse showed no signs of decay. Seeing this, the archaeologists present were so shocked that their mouths hung open. This made the captain of the archaeology team, Newmanhwa, a little flustered.